Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Twisted Cast. Today is a very special episode. It's probably going to be a little longer, just like our last one, because we're going to be talking about Twisted Metal Black, as well as Twisted Metal Black Online, because we have the lead developer of that with us today, and always, Goodrich here, and we're very excited to hear his thoughts on it and all the behind-the-scenes goodies and all that. Really quick, though, before we get into it, I did want to give a little disclaimer. Just as a little reminder that if we ever talk about people that we would like to have on as a guest on this podcast, because in the future we would love to have guests on it, we want to make sure that people aren't going to other people's videos or adding them on social media or whatever, trying to get their attention to be on our podcast. Basically, if we were to want somebody to be on the podcast, we will be the people to reach out to them. Mainly just because it's professional that way, and it doesn't come across as like we're needing somebody to be on the podcast, if that makes sense. But yeah, we truly appreciate everybody who wants others to be on it and that have been supporting us and enjoying the content. But we just wanted to give a little disclaimer about that before we start it. So here we go. So starting out the podcast today, we are going to be talking about how we first got into Twist Metal Black, or like when did we first play it. For me, I'd have to really go back my memory bank because I remember playing it for a very little amount when it first came out as a kid because I wasn't allowed to actually get it yet. My parents wouldn't buy it for me. I couldn't buy it for myself. I wasn't old enough. But I remember my best friend's dad ended up getting it, and I would kind of sneak it from him when I was over at their house. I remember like me and my best friend would sneak it from his dad, and we'd play it for a little bit here and there, but at the time we were just too scared to play it. I remember like legitimately getting freaked out by the intro movies and stuff. I remember Crazy 8 like really scared me the first time I saw that intro of his. And I remember having nightmares from it, and I just couldn't beat the game. I couldn't play more than like maybe the first level. Maybe Suburbs was the farthest I got. And I just was like, I can't do this. I can't handle it. And then it was later in life. I was like 16, 17, and I ended up getting a copy myself. I don't remember how, but I finally got my own copy, and that's when I first like finally played through the entire game, loved it, and the rest is really history. It's still one of my favorites in the series by far. But I'm curious, Drew, when did you first play Twist Metal Black? 'Cause I know you're a huge fan.
Oh man, I'm so honored that you picked me first. Oh boy. Yeah, no, Twisted Metal Black is my favorite Twisted Metal game by far, not even close. My first experience with it was, like, of all these games, was actually when I was a kid. Unlike the other games I played as more like an adult. But yeah, my dad bought it. He was a fan of it. He enjoyed it. But he didn't play it that much, and he would leave the PlayStation available for me. I didn't really care much what I played. So I'd play it. I was just like you, afraid of those cutscenes, just utterly terrified of Dollface, of Crazy Eight, of Mr. Grimm. Every time I saw his lunch plate or whatever, just freaked me out. So I'd always skip those. Could skip those fast enough. But I would always play with cheats too. Always had the Mega Guns cheat. I
Hell
just
yeah.
wanted to see shit explode. I was a very simple child. Wanted to see things explode. But it always inspired me the way the game is presented, just this dark, horrific environment. And it's what's pushed me to want to make content in the beginning was I want to express myself creatively, and something that I've always wanted to talk about was Twisted Metal. So those things kind of helped me become the content creator I am today. In fact, the first time I ever made videos was like those. You guys remember those anime music videos they put up on YouTube? Or it was like Breaking Benjamin to like Naruto or something.
Oh my God,
Like supposed
yeah.
to be epic anime battle. So I
Yes.
would do that, but it was Twisted Metal Black,
Hell
and it
yeah.
was so that was like the first time I ever like
Oh,
made any
yes.
sort of content. It was awful. It was terrible. Like I do not recommend those ever be seen by the earth. But it's just this game means a lot to me and my journey as a creative person. So that's my experience. But I
Sweet.
wonder the opposite end of the spectrum. No no spoilers, but I think KongDoo is going to be the opposite of me. So I want to go to him next and see where he
With
is.
with what, when I first played the game, or how I feel
Well,
about it?
but both. I want the whole thing.
Well, I remember my older brother had it,
Jesus.
and he was like, he loved it, and like I obviously how the kid stuff is with like your older sibling, if you have one. Like usually you see what your older brother
Yeah.
does, and you're like, oh, that's gonna be cool. Like that's just how it works. I remember I played the game because my parents didn't have any restriction of me playing like games. Like my parents had the philosophy of like it's just a video game. Doesn't matter if you see someone dying, whatever. It's just a video game. It's not real. So my mother didn't care about what I played.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember playing it, like I played through, because the only one I really remember is Warthog is the only character I remember using as a kid, because that's the only ending that like actually like I think it was maybe the voice actor that scared me. I think because I think the voice actor was pretty good that did the voice for him. Obviously now it's fucking dumb, but at the time I was a kid and I thought it was really cool to look at it. I was like, oh my god, this is scary. This is so I don't know how to feel about this. And
Yeah.
I couldn't beat the game without cheats. It was impossible for me as a kid to do as expected. And after that, I didn't really play it at all because I was kind of getting to the age of I don't care about this stuff anymore, and like I wanted to play Halo 3, so I just played that instead because I was starting to get, obviously I wanted the new shiny console with the new games on it,
Yeah.
so I didn't care to play it. And then I went back like I was probably like maybe 15, 16 years old, and I did play the game, and I didn't have too much trouble like playing through it. I didn't care for the cutscenes at all. Like even as like a 14-year-old, I kind of starting to be like, yeah, I can see this being scary for someone who's like a little kid, whatever. But
Yeah.
it didn't really get me anymore. Like even when I watched the Warthog ending again, I was like, this is stupid. Like this is like creepypasta, like Sonic.exe stuff. Like I don't care that much.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate like them sticking with their creative guns to like really hone in on that. I guess like the vibe of the game. I just don't care about it. So I kind of looked at it and I was like, this is like kind of boring to me.
Mm-hmm.
When I just looked at the game, I just didn't give a shit at all. And that's really about it. Like I spent most of my time recently playing it for like, seriously, because even when I played it again and revisited it, I didn't care. So that like recently was like my first time actually unlocking Minion for real because I used using cheats all the time back then. And obviously my opinion hasn't changed about the stories, but I think the game plays really well though. That's definitely the strongest suit of it. And when we touch on Twisted Metal Black Online, we'll definitely talk a lot more about the gameplay, which is I think that's the most important aspect of this game and the best aspect of this game. But I'm curious with Dave of how you got your hands on this game because you were around in the scene during the time. So
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was. Actually, the first time I played it was at Incognito, I think in November 2000. I had just left Luxo, finishing up Star Wars Demolition, and moved out to basically accept a job out in Utah with Incognito. And my first few days there were up at the studio as I was kind of getting ramped up. And everybody was working on Twisted Metal Black. And I got to play around with it and the cars and get the feel for it. And I was very impressed. I would say it was about, I want to guess, 70-80% all there at that point.
Wow.
And it played well. It looked great. They really kind of took the car combat up to the next level with like a lot of the reticles they had on the ground, showing where like shots were going to land, and their missiles would hug the ground, which I thought was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually in games like this, they just hit the ground. If there's any kind of incline or decline, they just fly off into space. So I thought that was pretty genius. And then all the skill shot stuff. But that was actually my first time was seeing it in development up there as they were building the levels and play testing it and fixing bugs and all that kind of stuff. So I was very impressed with what I saw, but I also kind of, to Kong's point, was just like, visually it was unimpressive, except for, the initial diorama screen where you could go in and select the cars and there was explosions going off and it felt so dynamic and cool and had a lot of energy to it.
Yeah.
But the gameplay itself was just like, this is a gray mess. Like I was just like, I was impressed with everything but kind of the visuals there. What about you, Mr. 989?
Hello. Yeah, so Mr. 99. Oh god.
Please, that was my
Jim
father.
Buck, is
Call
that
me
you?
Winters.
Yeah, it's me, Jim. So I played, Twisted Metal Black again, similar story as before. My cousins always got the cool stuff first, and so I remember them playing the game a lot back then. on those giant HD TVs that were just way too heavy. But I didn't really own it until I actually got my own PS2 back in '09 as a birthday present. And I managed to find a game in the as used on a GameStop, and I remember I used to kind of play it a little religiously at one point. I'm always playing on like hard mode, playing as Mr. Grimm, and I always enjoyed it for what it was. Like I really thought the app. I don't know. I was like 12, 13 years old. You know, I was kind of going through a phase where I'm like, oh, this is so edgy and cool and whatnot. With Mr. Grimm always being my favorite, you know, story and character to play as. But now looking at it now, I still think it sort of holds up in terms of like gameplay to an extent. Um, I do critique it for the fact that it's just so damn dark all the time, especially in like junkyard. Like I can't even see a goddamn thing when it rains or whatnot.
Right.
But I always find myself playing this game from time to time. I wouldn't say it's, you know, my favorite game to kind of chill and play on, but uh, for some reason sometimes I always come back to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of replayability, just like every Twisted Metal, of course. I my biggest thing that I like about Black, I think, is the gameplay. I'm always been a huge fan of the fast-paced nature of it. Kind of what Dave said, there's also a lot of skill shot stuff in this game that just makes it more satisfying to get kills. I don't know. There's certain aspects that really keep me coming back to it, and it used to be the dark nature of it I was really a big fan of. And to a degree, I still like the world of TM Black. I like the stories and stuff, but you know, Kong's pointed out some good points about it, that like there is a lot of monotonous like similarities with the stories. There's a lot of just revenge plots that get old.
There's like
and,
7 revenge stories.
right. And then like when I did my video recently on Warthog, playing through that one again and watching his story again, I'm like, geez, this is literally just a carbon copy of Sweet Tooth story, basically, just shittier, like more edgy.
I
basically,
would
yeah.
knives as hands.
Yeah, no.
It's like how are you gonna drive, dude? You're
Good
gonna
luck
cut up
with
your
that,
steering wheel, right?
Like
In
drives with
defense
his
of that
hate.
story, though, the voice actor did, I think, a really good job.
He
making
did.
it,
He
like,
sounds
creepy
really
and haunting.
creepy.
He sold the whole thing. It's terrible writing. It's
Yeah.
awful, but the voice acting is top notch, I think.
yeah. And being that this was the first game in the series on the next gen console, PS2, I think they came out swinging. You know, I think they really showcased the power of the PS2 with Twisted Metal Black.
Yeah, with the 60 frames a second, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh hell yeah!
I mean, it runs great. It looks great. I think still to this day, it's one of the best looking PS2 games. I mean, obviously, I have a bias, but I do still stand by that. Like, every time I come back to this game, I'm like, wow, this is a PS2 game? Like, this still holds up. Maybe that has to do with the black and grays and stuff. Like, you can hide a lot of imperfections with darker colors. But I don't know. It still stands to this day with its graphics. I mean, launching in June 18th of 2001, I'm like, wow. It kind of blows my mind every time I think of like how old this game is, but how good it still looks to this day.
It has like such a strong art direction that I think when you think of things that hold up over a long period of time, it's not things that try to be realistic. It's the things that have a very strong art direction. I think this game does. It might be monotonous, as you guys have said, that it's just nothing really.
Yeah.
There's no dynamics to it. It's just all dark and gray and gloom. But I do think it's very strong in its art, and I think why it holds up the way it does. Whereas something like TM2 or TM1, where it's trying to depict the real world, it's never going to hold up. Like photorealism, it's a goalpost that always moves. Whereas if you have an art design you're trying to go for, you nail it, then it's timeless.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. Even though my preference would be like if they just pushed in a couple of more colors, kind of like, you know, Nightmare Before Christmas. If you guys, I'm sure you're familiar with that movie. They went with that very desaturated palette, but they would punch up certain colors that were associated with that land, like oranges and reds and whites. And I kind of wish they punched up just a couple of more colors here and there.
Yeah.
It's nice the way it made the particles stand out, but everything else was too unrealistically drab for my taste. If that makes sense.
I think that was the point. I wasn't there. I wasn't there.
It definitely was.
But like the particles being like the fire and the explosions and the weapons and stuff being the only color you see.
Hmm.
I think it makes for a nice contrast,
And
even
it
if it's not
also,
enough color.
if you think about it, like if you're trying to go with the canon that yes, it all takes place in Sweet Tooth's head, and he is insane, and the only thing he likes is violence, it kind of makes sense that the missiles and explosions and death would be the only thing with color in the game because that's what he enjoys. But that might be reading too much into it. I don't know. I think the explosions.
Also, Jaffy
What?
came up with that like as a retrofit after the game was
He did.
launched.
Yeah, he
What?
said that before. Like it was a last minute thing. Like it wasn't from like a lot of people like to think that it was the original idea from the beginning of Black that it was all going to take place in his head. But no, he like fit that in like right before release. Like that was like a last minute addition. Which I don't know. It kind of reminds me of like the ending of anything where it was all a dream. It wasn't real. I always find it as a cop out. It's just lazy writing. So I don't personally like that idea that it's all in his head, but it is what it is. It's in the game, so can't really fight it.
Twisted Metal Inception.
Pretty much.
The game within a game within a clown's head.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of wish in a way that it was the original idea from the beginning because they could have went really far with that.
It's a cool concept. Like that stuff
Mhm.
hasn't really been tapped into before.
Yeah.
Like it is a really cool like idea. It just was executed like dog shit because it was just a last minute idea, and like that's
and it's
it-
hidden.
It really sucks because it's like the potential of a story like that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and to Nick's point too is like, and if they knew about it beforehand, they could have built to it, and really kind of punched up some of the stories and had some kind of surprise moments at the end, where Sweet Tooth maybe is watching it from the sidelines, not realizing that it was actually in his head.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like throughout every character's endings, you see Sweet Tooth, or there's some sort of like symbolism of him like constantly, instead of making like these ridiculous stretches like, oh my god, like Calypso's missing the same eye Sweet Tooth is, like, oh my god, it's his alternate personality. Like real things, like it would have been cool to like actually have real symbolism to show that, oh, this is in Sweet Tooth's head. And it would have been a cool revelation if it was actually like the initial idea they had.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing too that's interesting with this is that it was the first game in the series to be mature rated, and I always thought that was kind of interesting. It was really bold for them to kind of, I wouldn't say like alienate their what do you call it, like their fans or their players, but they they went from a T-rated game all the way up through Twist Metal 1 through 4. And then all of a sudden it's mature now, so you have to be 17 years or older. And granted, probably all the kids that started out playing Twist Metal like me and you guys like grew up with the game, so they were probably old enough to buy it when it came out. I sadly wasn't. But it's one of those things like I can understand why they went the darker direction. They wanted to, I remember Jaffe has said in the past that he always originally wanted Twist Metal to be this dark. He wanted it to be gory and more like a horror movie. But then later he's kind of contradicted himself and said, I wanted to be more like TM2. So I don't know what the real reason is, but I think there's a place in the world for both versions, but it's one of those things where like, there's a part of me that kind of wishes it wasn't mature so I could have played it earlier in life. But
and it also causes other issues as well with like alienating the fan base. Like there's people who just don't like this, and then they just change it to this, and it's like, why? It's like spitting in the fans' faces, essentially.
Yeah.
It's because they don't like, the people like the world of Twisted Metal 2 or whatever. Like even the 989 games are like, they're ridiculous. Like they strayed far away from the initial ideology of Twisted Metal, but it's still like in the same realm of like, it still has that like campy, like colorful, like ridiculous vibe, even though it's slightly over the top.
Right.
It's still there. It's not like, oh, you got like a Halloween decoration as a character, and you got these jump scares, and like they make this game so like grotesque.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's like, why? You know what I mean? That's how I see it, and that's what I thought too. Like I was like, why did you do that? Like I don't understand. Like because you felt like it. It's more like an ego trip thing. Like you can't just change something like that.
And it's also really weird that like Black doesn't have any comedy in it whatsoever. Unless you look at the, there's memes obviously we've made from it since
Yeah, I
the
was gonna
game's
say,
release.
John.
Like unintentionally there's some funny shit in the game. But in the what they were going for is 100% serious. And I will say I think it's a detriment. I think they took themselves a little too seriously.
Well, Manslaughter has a joke, the screw you, love Calypso thing.
Yeah.
A bit of brevity.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not funny though.
I think it's funny. Screw you, love Calypso. It's like a giant Gimsu demon. I love it.
Yeah. I mean that is true. Drew, yeah, that does prove me wrong a little bit. There was a joke in there, but my main point is just that like TM2 had so many dark jokes. Like dark comedy was the main point of it. Even TM3 and TM4 had some dark comedy in there. Albeit they were more silly, but it's like they didn't take themselves seriously at all, and I think that made it better. And I'm kind of glad. Obviously, this episode isn't about the TV show, but I'm glad the TV show went that route as well. That it went not taking itself seriously, and I think that actually helped it be more relatable to the audience and more fun. And yeah, I can understand why people playing Black for the first time really didn't like it. They got turned off by it because they're like, yeah, I'm not really into horror. I'm not really into edgy seriousness. This is too dark for me. And I can get that. Even though I didn't mind it and I liked it, I can understand why others didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jaffe was kind of on a kick at the time, from what I understand from the Incog guys, that he wanted to kind of divorce himself from the wacky and / dark comedy of the previous Twisted Metals and take it in a completely new direction where it was going to be very serious and dark. And I remember getting an email from him on Small Brawl where we started to do some silly things. He's like, I thought we weren't going to do this crap anymore. And I'm just, I remember Scott firing back going, it's a game for kids.
Yeah.
For the kids, yeah.
It's like, what are we going to do? Put serial killers in here? Like, I mean, we did kill a bunch of kids and off camera in Small Brawl, but we wanted to do that with that wacky funness, but he was kind of done with that. He went from Black into
God of
War, which also had very serious tones too in it.
Mm-hmm.
But that seemed to be kind of his new direction, at least for a bit.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just, I think, I don't know. Even though we're talking about it as if Twisted Metal Black failed, it was a successful game. I mean, based off what I could find on Google really quick, by July 2006, Black had sold almost 1 million copies, so 950,000 copies, and earned $31 million in the U.S. alone. And this was an international release, where TM3 and 4... Oh, what?
It was butchered really bad, though. I feel bad for the EU fans.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I was going to get that in a second, because TM3 and 4 both were not sold overseas. They were only in the U.S., and, we all went over that already. They sold pretty well, really well, actually. And then TM Black sells really well in the U.S. I don't know how well it sold overseas, and that was because what Kong just brought up, the PAL version got, it greatly suffered cuts, which included the removal of all the cutscenes, except a heavily cut middle scene of the selected vehicle entering and leaving Minion Stadium, and a shot of the vehicle driving down a street in the ending cutscene. Just imagine going through Twisted Metal Black. It's already, really just dark and drab, and you kill Minion, nothing happens. You get to the next level, you're like, okay. You get to the very end of the game, you kill Snorhawk, and then you just see him driving away on a street with no dialogue and no reasoning. I would have felt so cheated. I would have been like, what's the point? Why would I go and play another character? I don't know. I feel like the story is what brings Black together. It's like that gives me a reason to why it's so dark and drab and the color palette's the way it is. So I don't know. That's so sad, knowing that they cut it that badly.
I think too, in that PAL version, that the credit sequence, it still shows the same footage there, so it cuts up a nice montage of all the different stories,
which is even worse because now you're like, where the fuck is all that coming
teased.
From? What is this? Is this what I'm missing out on?
I think the PAL version has some unique cutscenes because not every vehicle in the main game, the North American version, has the vehicle driving out of Blackfield Asylum or the car driving at the end of the street. when he finished the game. So because of the PAL version, there was no context for any of the vehicles. Every car had to leave Blackfield, and every car had to drive down the street.
Yeah.
So you got some weird footage there, like manslaughter leaving Blackfield. Like, it looks absurd, but it's there.
Is it really?
So that,
Yeah.
I'll have to look
They
that up. I
assume
don't
this
think
is
I've ever
because
seen
of the-
that.
Yeah, I assume it's because of the very strict rules over in Europe where it's like you can't show blood. Like you would
Yeah.
either turn it green or do something else. So since everything was bloody in those games, they pretty much cut everything.
Wow.
So I think they decided that the game would sell so poorly overseas, which it did, and
Yeah.
so it wasn't worth spending the extra money to cut enough to make it worthwhile. So like, fuck it, we'll just cut everything. It's just cheaper that way.
That's so sad. Poor
Yeah.
pal.
And we
It
have
really
YouTube
sucks.
now, so people can just look up the
Yeah, that
cutscenes
is
now if
true.
they wanted to.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of like Jaffe's whole reasoning for 2012 and like why they didn't really have many cutscenes and stuff, because he says you can just look it up on YouTube. And it's like,
Right.
yes and no. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like if there's a game that I care about or that I want to know the end, I want to get to the ending, I will play and figure it out myself. And then later, after I've seen it myself in the game, I will look it up on YouTube just to see other people's reactions to it, like in the comments.
Although
Yeah.
TM 2012 had more cutscene time, like there was more cutscenes
Yeah.
there than any other game.
Mhm.
There's like an hour and a half or so of cutscenes versus Black has like 45 minutes or something.
Yep.
I don't know. I think the people who got the PAL version are probably lucky anyways.
Why?
Because they never had to see Fat Sweet Tooth.
Fat sweet tooth. What?
Yeah, the cutscene when he kills Calypso and he's like standing over him.
Is he fat
knife?
in Black? I thought he was like ripped.
Yeah, because if you play the PAL version,
he's got some
you see
chunk to him.
you see
Oh.
the buff Sweet Tooth in the character select screen. So that means they never see Fat Sweet Tooth.
Oh wow. I guess I forgot about
beefy. He's beefy in
Yeah.
that series. Yeah.
that. Big
I
Bear.
think at one point I called him a
Yeah.
rotund mass of clown ass.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
3 months at the Nut House.
Well, like, and not only did they cut, the cutscenes, but I also found out, so in the PAL version, they also made cuts including the removal of the Boeing 747 in the junkyard level, so you can't unlock Yellow Jacket? I guess.
No, it's just already open. It's already crashed.
Oh, okay. Which is
Yeah.
boring, because it's like, oh, well, there's a tunnel over here. Let me go through here. Whoa, Yellow Jacket. There's no secret to it. So that kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's crazy to
Uh,
think about it because back in the day, I mean, people, because of 9/11, people were really sensitive about planes crashing and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
I think that's
understandable.
why it got cut. The PAL version came out after
Yeah.
the North American version, so it was probably after 9/11.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a thing in Small Brawl about that, like, honoring the people who lost their lives in 9/11 because like we saw that during development
Right.
at the studio, like the news, someone was watching the news and all of a sudden we saw like one plane go in and we're like, oh my God, what a tragic accident. The second one went in. But that you're correct, that whole thing actually changed the entire dynamic of being able to show any of that kind of stuff happening in games
Yeah.
ever again. So all that stuff was cut like afterwards.
That's so crazy. And like I get it 100%, especially being quote unquote like too soon. I don't know. My whole mindset though is like when I'm playing a game, I think of it as a fantasy world. I don't ever really consider it like in canon to the real world unless it's a game based on a real event, I guess. But I don't know. It's for me, it's like if there's a plane crash in a game, I never would immediately associate that with a real tragedy. But unless it's deliberately trying to be, but it's one of those things. Like I get it. It just sucks that got taken out, and then like the loading screen text pieces and in-game info of the drivers got changed up, I guess. Which I'm kind of curious if anybody's ever made like a supercut of them together, like side by side, which one, like what the differences are. It'd be
Ooh, I don't
interesting to
know.
see that.
That's a good question.
However, these short clips of the cutscenes were shown in the credits, like that's what Drew just said, as well as gameplay clips showing the 747 being shot down is also in the credits. So they didn't cut that out for some reason. Also,
It was in the
flaming
trailer,
drivers do not run around screaming from the wreckage after you kill them in the PAL version.
Sheesh.
Do they
So-
run around just not on fire, or
I'm assuming they're not there at all. Like, but maybe they're just not on fire. I don't know. Because like, I don't know. My assumption
I
would be
think
like,
I've heard that before.
Yeah, like they would just remove it so you can't run them over. But
I
don't know.
guess so. Like I don't know. To me that's cartoony enough that it's like, come on, what are we doing? It's not
Yeah.
that like they literally they fly like 40 feet in the air. Like it's no one's gonna think that's realistic.
Right. Well, I don't know. Back
Also,
then,
you get free health from it, so like
you
know,
get
you're
help
taking
from
that
it.
away
It's a
from
good
players.
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Murder's good. I don't know. It is interesting when you look at like censorship and stuff in other countries compared to the U.S. I feel like the U.S. cuts out a lot of like sexual themes, but leaves in a lot of violence, and then
Yeah.
like other countries are all like sex is fine, but you can't show a guy like getting his head cut off. We can't do that.
Yeah,
you are
it just depends
correct.
on what the violence is, though. I mean, obviously now, I mean, I think like the plane crash stuff, that was like an absolute no.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure, like, I don't think any publisher would allow that.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think Dave, you were talking about Small Brawl even had like some things about the 9/11 tragedy. I didn't you say there was like a beta version that like had it at the beginning of the
Yeah,
game?
I've played
Yeah.
it. One of the builds I had, it had a 9/11 message at the beginning of the game.
Yeah,
Right when
we
you
had
turn it
a
on, it was like an American flag, and it said something about like we're sorry it's to the families and stuff like that.
Wow.
yeah, just like thoughts and prayers go out to the family and all this stuff, and we had that at the opening screen. But yeah, it was one of those things that kind of it hit a little home because I had just left the Pentagon to go work in the game industry.
Yeah, that's wild.
In the exact wing that got hit. So if I had stayed and not gone into games, it could have been a different story. I'm not saying it would have been, but it was just like I knew people who worked in that building. So thankfully, none of them, got hit by that. But
Yeah.
um, it did hit close to home for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also interesting with Small Brawl, like this, just imagine that the final game, the final product that we still have today, like I have the disc right over here. If that still had that when every time you open it up and turn it on, it has that like 9/11 remembrance on it. I feel like that would, I don't know, it would just feel out of place. Like it's a
It
good
would.
sentiment, I totally get it, but it makes it such a somber like, oh man, like right before you're about to
Yeah.
play like a kid, quote unquote kid friendly game. So
Yeah, it's a nice tribute, but it does not belong in a video game. And
yeah.
it wouldn't have felt right. You're right. Like decades later, it would not fit, especially with a kid's game.
Mm-hmm.
I got some confirmation on the loading screens. They're just blank. There's nothing there.
No way. So
Yeah,
there's
it's just
Is it just
a
a
one
level?
asylum wall. Yeah, no, it's because it
Oh.
still shuts that door, whatever it is.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just like
Yeah.
that padded cell wall.
does it show their face?
Yeah, you still see the face. You just don't see any text.
I
There's
didn't know how
no-
bad the PAL version was. I didn't know
Yeah,
it was
they
that
gutted it.
butchered.
Do you see
Wow.
any blood smears anywhere on anybody or
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah, I saw Yellow Jacket, like the dead guy with a bullet hole in his head. That's still there, as grotesque as it is
Wow.
in the North American version. And then the padded cell, it's hard to see because of the text, but you have a nice clean wall there. There's like bloody handprints and stuff on it there.
That's so weird.
Yeah. Usually blood and violence are the biggest things that the EU demands is taken out of their games.
Right. And even Minion he's got the bloody bull head on. That's still there.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just an oversight, or I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't enough to cut.
Yeah, maybe.
It's just jelly coming out of his helmet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He's just
I
very
mean-
messy eater.
On an animal, you could get around that. Like EU doesn't care too much about that, but human beings, they definitely threw fits about for sure.
And, I mean, Yellow Jacket is literally a zombie, so I'm surprised that got to stay.
It's a bullet hole in his head.
Yeah.
That's so wild. Just no story at all. Like the least they could have done is expanded the text in the loading screen to make
Right, just to give you some context.
Yeah, to give you a legit story, like to what's going on. But that's so funny. There's just no story at all. Just our
You
combat.
have Mr. Grimm is still there wearing an actual human skull. So that's still present. No Face's face is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So they left some pretty gnarly stuff in the game. If they're going to be that strict about it, there's still some nasty stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yellow Jacket, full on bullet hole in the head. So with a kid just behind him, like, what do you want me to do?
I feel
my
like it
God,
could have
so
been easy to
stupid.
Photoshop the bullet hole out too, like to make
It
him.
Oh, I'm
would've.
sure they could have easily. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so weird.
Yeah, I'll give you guys an example. I'll put in the Discord. Maybe you could share it in the final version
Okay.
or cut
Yeah,
this segment out.
my guess is they were done. They knew it wasn't going to sell well in Europe, so they didn't bother to put effort into like photoshopping out the bullet head or bullet hole or doing anything like that.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it just wasn't worth the effort at that point.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I guess kind of switching topics a little bit here. With Twisted Metal Black, they also, they introduced a lot of new things to the game that weren't in previous entries that I think were for the better, in my opinion. The biggest thing, and I understand, like, I think Cody's argued against me on this one, and he rightfully has a good point, that my biggest thing that I like about Black is that the lives reset on every level. And yeah, they brought it back, of course, in Small Brawl and on Head On, I think, as well. No, they didn't.
No, Head On, I think it's bugged in the PS2 version.
It's supposed to have it, but yeah, the PS2 port is bugged. You can't actually have it. It's supposed to be there though.
Oh wow, okay. Because in my mind, I'm like, I remember doing that, but that's because I played the PSP version.
Yeah, it's only on the PC version. Yet people were telling me that the PS2 version's amazing. And sure, even though it's just a glitchy, broken mess of a game, but okay.
Yeah, but like,
It's got one extra level. So.
yeah,
Yeah, that Transylvania, the one level, that's amazing. That has a bunch of dead space. But
yep.
we'll get to that when we
in the Head On one. The Head On.
Yeah.
That's where I'll be snoring. I'll be sleeping during that episode.
Talk about Head On while Head On.
Yes. But yeah, so like I like that about Black. I like that level reset because it not only does it just feel like, I don't know, oh, I've reached the next level. It's a triumph, and now I get to reset. Like I don't have to worry about, well, I lost a life in the last level. Now I only have one life for the rest of the entire game. La la la. It feels like a slog. I don't know. I've never liked that idea of like, if you die, you have to restart from the beginning, and you can't restart from that level. And the other thing too is if you do lose all 3 of your lives in said level, you can just hit retry and go right there. You don't have to go back to the main menu or do a level code or anything like that. I do understand to a degree that had to do with the times, like I don't know how they set up the game, but they had those level codes, and it was just more of a nuisance to have to go back to the beginning and type it in and get back to where you were. And what Cody's argument was is like, it literally is the same thing. You just can restart, where you were with a level code. There's no real difference. It's just there's less hassle involved. I don't know. And I've said before, and I know it doesn't really make sense, but to me, it just feels, I don't know, it feels better to be able to just to hit retry and start where you were than to have to go and type in a code to get back to where I was. I just feel less dirty about it, I guess. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's if the level codes, you're actually doing the same thing. You're just going to put in a code to get back to where you were with both lives.
Mm-hmm.
So if you use both your lives on a level, you get to the next one, oh, I have nothing. Then you just back out, you exit the game, put the code in, and get back there. So it's just adding time and nuisance to the player when you could just have the restart button or just give you your lives back.
Yeah,
it doesn't prevent you, like having extra lives every level doesn't mean you have to use them. So if you wanted to do a deathless run or even like just role play as a TM2 elitist and say, okay, I'm going to get through the whole game
with only 3 lives,
you can do that. Just do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it just gives the player a little bit more flexibility. Oh my god.
Yeah. I mean, even though like the gameplay was fantastic and it was tight, and they did a lot of really cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The AI was brutal in that game. Like it was rough, and it was very frustrating for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think giving them 3 lives to get through each level was kind of necessary. Otherwise, I think a lot of people would have reviewed it or just not bought it based on, mouth or word of mouth, because it was a hard game. Even Jaffe admitted that recently, I think.
It definitely is. I mean, a lot of people seem to just overlook that stuff because they're like, "Oh, I'm good at the game, so it doesn't matter." But like, they don't realize that's a problem. Like, that's just not good game design to do stuff like that. Like, people shouldn't be alienated from enjoying the game or being forced to play something on easy mode just so they can finish it.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's just because like some people can't even beat the first level. Like they get stuck on the first level for like 20, 30 minutes and keep losing over and over again because it's not like there's a way for people to learn the controls or whatever. So if they're a new player they play Twisted Metal Black for the first time, they're just gonna be like, okay, fuck this game, and just return it to the store and go get something else.
Yeah.
Like, not everyone's gonna have the patience to sit through that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the people who are just like get good. That's like 10% of the players, and
It's probably it's even
Yeah.
less than that. Like that people, not everyone's gonna have the patience for that.
Mhm.
Like they're just gonna be like, I'm not gonna bother with this anymore. Like
Yeah,
it's too hard. Like fuck.
it's
this.
really rough if you're a first time player, especially if you never even played Twisted Metal before.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of a weird guy in the middle. I'm not one to ever say get good or like, the problem is you. The game is not hard. But I personally, like, even looking back at when I was a little kid and, and I was playing with my best friend and we snuck it from his dad, I remember the game being hard as shit. But also, the only thing I remember is I being scared of it and I didn't want to get farther into the game. But then when I came back to it at like 15, 16, I remember never really thinking this game was that hard. Now, granted, I didn't play it on hard. I only played it on a medium. I never wanted to like make it difficult to myself. And I remember there being some times where I was like, dang, I died all the way and I had to restart a level a couple times to get past it with a certain character. But I never like rage quitted. I don't remember ever having an issue where I said this game is too difficult. But that being said, I've watched videos of people playing Black for the first time. And like Kong said, getting stuck on the first level, because it is a hard level going against 7 people right off the beginning. And it's some areas are really tough to see in when it's raining and stuff like that. And if you don't know how to play Twisted Metal, if you didn't grow up with it, don't know the controls, I can 1,000% understand why somebody would think this game is tough. But then there's people that are, I don't call them professionals, but I'll say that they play Twisted Metal all the time. They're really good at Twisted Metal. And they'll still tell me Twisted Metal Black is the hardest one in the series, and they hate it because it's too difficult. And to me, I'm like, I don't know. I don't see that. I mean, if you understand the controls and you can understand the levels, like the level layout, I think it's possible and it's not that hard. But then again, I think the biggest thing is how fast and frantic the gameplay is compared to the other games, because it is like probably 3 times faster than TM2 if I put them next to each other. And that's not just because of the 60 frames a second. I think it's just in general, like the AI is a lot quicker. They can get away a lot faster from you. The cars feel quicker and faster. Missiles shoot a lot faster. All the above. And like Dave said earlier with the skill shot stuff, like I think the gameplay itself is so much faster and frantic. It's just some people can't really fathom that. They don't like that kind of gameplay, which is totally fair. And again, I don't think that's a skill issue. I don't think it's like you need to get good. I think it's just some people like it and some people don't.
Nick's a 1%er. Get him.
I am the 1%.
Yeah, I think the game does throw you to the deep end in a way that's really unforgiving.
Yeah.
Because of how fast the pace is and how, unlike other games of that era, I think the skill that's involved to complete a level is much higher than almost any other game. Because the cars have a lot of health. Like, it's not like a quick time to kill. So it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time of navigating the battlefield, collecting weapons, and finding that rhythm of attacking and defending and running and getting health.
Yeah.
That it takes a long time to acclimate. And I think for a lot of people that learning curve is too steep, and so they give up. But once you get to that peak, you overcome that threshold of skill, it becomes, I think, one of the most rewarding games in the series.
Mm-hmm.
I think Winter's in someone that can really attest to that as someone he played on hard difficulty. Where for me, I played a lot of Twisted Metal Black. Even for me, hard is insane. Like it's I can't conceptualize of like I could spend 1,000 years playing the game. I'd probably never get to that point where I'm that good. But for him, he got to that point, and now that's the only way he can play it, where it's that rewarding.
Yeah.
And so I think if a game can do that, where it just keeps giving back to you, the more you put into it, I think that's a sign of a good gameplay. But Winters, please tell me about your experience there.
Yeah, so I mean, I remember playing in a medium all the time, and I think medium is probably the way to go, just because, just from my experience playing the game multiple times, it's when you play on hard mode. I mean, the enemies are bullet sponges; they do way more damage to you.
Yeah.
When you pick up health, you get less health, and the fact that you can only do a full recharge once per level.
It's ridiculous.
Honestly, hard mode. Playing on hard mode now is not bad, but for me at least. But getting into it over the years, I remember it being kind of like a stress fest almost, where it was like it was a challenge for me to get to that point, and it was super difficult. But again, that's just me playing it religiously day in day out when I was a teenager. Um, I wouldn't even recommend anybody to play hard mode. It's not as fun for the majority of players just because it's such a twitch fest where you have to be really quick on your feet all the time, and especially with the PS2 controller back in the day, like it was super easy for like your hands to start sweating, and
Yeah.
the control again like slippery and stuff like that. I mean, thankfully now I could use a PS5 controller.
Yeah.
But like I don't see majority of people enjoying hard mode. It's way too much.
Mhm.
I'd argue it's not as fun. And if anybody was playing it, stick to easy or medium. Not that people can't get good as if they actually learn how to play the game. I would say arguably it's not as fun on hard mode at all.
I think it's legitimately bullshit on hard, to be honest.
It is bullshit. Like, for example, if you play a Spectre and you use her special, it does jack shit on fucking hard mode. Like, barely any damage, which really sucks because you're playing as a character that,
Same with
Harley
Darkseid.
does. Yeah, Harley does any damage it is. Yeah, if you play in Dark Side, what you'll find yourself getting, almost like kind of like Twisted Metal 2, Mr. Slam vibes, where the moment you use your special to ram an enemy AI, if they're not frozen or if you're not using shield, they will immediately freeze you within milliseconds of you using your special.
Yeah.
Which is complete bullshit, and it's kind of the reason why, like, you're kind of alienating yourself to use certain characters because it's like, oh well, I can only play as this character in hard mode because the AI is not as bullshit.
Right.
But yeah, like fucking Darkseid in hard mode is the worst. It's like it's the equivalent of playing as Hammerhead in Twisted Metal 2 on hard mode. It's just not fun at all.
And that's why I can totally understand why people like Cody, who only plays Twisted Metal on hard, like he's told me that multiple times, like he does not play any of the games below hard. He just says it's not fun, which I get that. If you like a challenge, if you're someone like that you have to be going against the hardest, enemies possible. Like, I can understand why he doesn't like black, because hard mode is legitimately unfair. It's meant to be frustrating. It kind of reminds me of in 2012, like there's an interview at E3 when they were showcasing the Iron Maiden fight. Jaffe exclaimed that he purposely designed the boss fight to be bullshit so that you'd rage quit and go to sleep mad, so that the next day you'd wake up and come back to it and have that aha moment and finish it. And I'm like, why the fuck would you make it like that? Like, why would you want your players to rage quit your game? So I can understand. I can probably see why he did that. Like, he probably did the same thing with hard mode in this one, where he's like, oh, you want it to be hard? Well, we're not going to make it a fun experience. You're gonna have to suffer, I guess.
It's such BS.
That was an old
make your vehicle
Insomniac.
like move half speed the entire time. Like, you have half health, half speed. You do half damage, 1 health recharge, and you're upside down the whole time. Have fun.
Yeah.
I feel like if it's more time to develop, they probably would have made it something like that.
Yeah, that reminds me of an old Insomniac design philosophy of, if you can't make a hard boss fun, or sorry, if you can't make a boss fun, make it hard, because then at least people remember it and talk about it, and it would kind of spread the word about the game in that way. So
yeah,
I don't know if he was applying that philosophy, but who knows?
Well, for the general gameplay in Twisted Metal Black, kind of like with Twisted Metal 1 and 2, something it's something I appreciate with 99, where it feels like the AI are actually like attacking each other in 3 and 4, but in Twisted Metal Black, just like in 1 and 2, like in Black, I will find myself, getting into groups of like 2 to 3 enemies sometimes, and just getting constantly harassed, and it's just I'm mostly evading and trying not to get destroyed, but it's so easy to go from full health to almost dying if you get yourself into bad situations. It's such a, how do you say, a penalizing experience of trying to experiment and having fun.
Right. And I also kind of talking about more of what they added to Black that wasn't in previous games. One thing that actually was in previous games, and it was only in TM1, was the health bridges. They brought them back.
Mhm.
And I found that really interesting because not only did they bring them back, but they also included regular health pickups like in TM2. So I'm kind of curious to hear your guys' thoughts on like, do you think that was a good idea to mix the both together, or do you think they should have just brought back what they did with TM2, where they had some full life pickups and some like half life pickups, or just do?
I think the
health
traditional
bridges?
pickups are fine. Honestly,
Yeah, same.
I don't really care for the health bridges, to be honest.
Same.
They were aggravating more than anything.
Yeah.
I think I got on a soapbox in an earlier episode about the health bridge that I do like them a lot. That I like that it gives you full health that the enemies can't use. So it's almost like your little secret place to hide. But
That's
I
fair.
do think they're kind of a pain in the ass to use. Like they're always oriented in such a way that if you're trying to like approach them at speed, you'll never be able to like just get on it. You always have to come to like a complete stop, turn slowly,
Yeah.
and then drive up onto it.
I
if
had
it's
that
more like a
problem in
bowl
Snowy
shape,
Road.
I
always got
they
glitched.
purposely do it. They have to. Like, there's no way that they thought those were the best places to put them.
Yeah.
Like the one on Prison Passage in like the middle of that field. Like, you're never going to approach it the way that it's oriented. You're always going
No.
to be perpendicular to it. It's absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The drift
I wish it
into
was like
basically.
Yeah, I wish it was like kind of like instead of like 2 like entrances, it's like 4 instead.
Right.
That way it's a
Yeah.
little
That's what
bit
I said
easier.
before. Yeah. Have a
Because,
ramp
like,
Just
on
have
all
something you
sides.
drive through instead of up onto.
Well,
Would
it's
be
just a
better.
pain in the ass because if you play like Manslaughter, like if you play like the bigger characters, it's such a chore just to like get
Yeah.
on there. Again, if you're playing on hard mode and you're fucking fiddling with the damn health bridge and you die because you can't even get on the thing, like it's happened to me a few times.
Skill issue,
it's-
honestly.
It's
Mhm.
if,
Yeah,
I
skill
mean, fuck
issue.
that. It's frustrating. It's frustrating as balls, man. It's just
Hard to drive.
like yeah, it's like
Learn to
it's again. Get your driver's license.
Yeah, I'm not a
damn
fan
it.
of the health bridges at all. I think and if they're going to put them in, they should have been consistent. Like either that is where your source of health is, or the pickups. And I think the pickups are better given the fact that you can get stuck on the health bridge,
Mhm.
or you could hit the side of the wall right as you need that health and just die, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also just like the weirdness of your car hanging off of it sometimes, then clipping into collision, and it's not great. I think they should have just left those in the past and moved on to the power-ups, which are much better.
100%.
Seriously, I always get stuck inside of like when I'm driving. Like I remember on snowy roads a lot, I would always get stuck inside of it.
Yeah.
my car
It's
would
glitched
glitch
out on
inside
that
of-
one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They would just get stuck inside, and I couldn't move. And sometimes I'd lose the health that I just got back, which is really annoying.
Yeah.
I just think the concept of a full health that's only accessible to the player, I think, is a great idea. The execution of the bridge itself, not so great. That I can't defend that.
I mean, I think it looks cool. Like my favorite part about it, like when you do use it, is like I like how it just shoots electricity. Like the charge you up is like zzz, and then like, all right, I'm on my way. Kind of like like a pit stop almost.
Yeah.
Like, I think that part's like pretty cool and how they thought about that. But
Mhm.
that's about it.
Yeah, I would agree with Drew where like I would not mind them at all if they just had a better system like to how to get up onto it. Like I kind of understand, we want to make it skillful, so like there's those chances that you may not make it on in time and die, and that's so funny. But it's like to the player it's just frustrating because you've already gotten away from the enemy. You've traveled who knows how long to get to this full heal. You're there. You just drift a little too far and you barely miss the ramp. And now you got to stop, hit the brakes, turn around, and slowly get up onto it with hopefully not getting hit by somebody in the back. And yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten killed because of that. And it's so frustrating.
Yeah, it feels like a parallel parking sim at that point. It's just
It
like, oh,
does.
I missed it. Got to back up, got to turn, got to back up, got to turn. I'm
Right.
I mean, I do
Oh,
get it as a way to increase the intensity because Twisted Metal, I mean, most games, I guess, are like this, but Twisted Metal especially is built on the philosophy of risk and reward.
Yeah.
And so anytime you can make a reward a little more risky, it makes it a little more intense and more rewarding once you actually get to it. Because there have been a handful of times, especially at the stadium on the freeway level, where I'm speeding towards it. I ramp up into the bowl, the stadium bowl, and I'm speeding towards the health bridge. And then either like the ambulance coming around the track just clobbers me and kills me, or I come at the wrong angle, so I like hit it from the side and like bounce off it, and someone chasing me just destroys me. Like it does increase the intensity, like that I can't deny. but it doesn't. The amount that it makes it more fun is outweighed by how fucking frustrating
Yeah.
it is. So I think that risk reward philosophy doesn't necessarily work there.
Yeah. And talking about like kind of rewarding things, I love that this is the first Twisted Metal that you can unlock characters by finding them in the maps. Even though I will admit some of them are stupidly hidden, like in a way where it's kind of impossible to figure it out unless you look up a strategy guide.
Axelon Freeway.
Yeah, I was
Axelon
about to say
Freeway
that, yeah.
isn't.
Oh, yeah.
You would never fucking do that. Like, I'm sorry. There's no way in a million years someone would figure
Unless
that
it
out.
was a freak accident, yeah.
Right.
It's like that would have to be just a random missile you're just shooting and it accidentally just hits that, and then
Yeah.
Even when I'm
Yeah.
trying to do it, I still can't.
Yeah. Same. That one took me the
takes me-
longest by far. Was Axel.
'Cause
Same
you're
with.
getting harassed the whole time. Like you can't just sit there for 30 seconds just shooting missiles. Like you can do it
Yeah.
one
Oh,
shot,
hell
move
no.
around. It's super hard to do.
Yeah. Same with manslaughter is kind of tough. You have to like first destroy the little crate outside the door to get like a little ramp, and then you get
Oh,
up
for the
onto
ship?
that where the health is, and then shoot the wall, and then the door opens. But it's like if you don't know about
That
it,
one's intuitive, I think.
yeah, like that one's cool. Like that, and that one could happen by accident. I could see that one happening where
The
like,
health is up there, so you already would know how do I get up to that health,
yeah,
make the bridge, and then all you have to do is shoot it a couple times, and it opens the doors. I think that one makes sense.
yeah, that one's cool. I like that idea. That one makes more sense. I'm trying to think what are the other ones. Yellow Jacket, I think, is
Boardwalk
also
Suburbs.
really cool. Where like you have this airplane, right? That's flying over the level the entire time you're playing. You're like, huh? I wonder if well, not only this could happen two ways, right? For me as a kid, it actually happened on accident, where I was on top of that area where you're supposed to shoot the plane, and I saw a guy below me, and so I shot a homing missile, but it was at the exact same time the plane was on top of me, and sure enough, it went up to the plane and hit it. And I remember like, as a kid, I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like how that's crazy. And then you unlock Yellow Jacket. That was really cool. And then Warthog, I also found by accident. I think I just went off the ramp in Suburbs, landed on that building, got the health, and I backed up and fell through the ground, and there he was. So
Can I back up a little bit? You
Yeah,
shoot
yeah.
the plane from. Where do you shoot the plane from?
you know, like the top of in the junkyard where the full heel is, there's like
Right.
the little ramp that kind of goes up and around.
Right.
Yep.
If you just
You
sit
shoot it from
there, yeah, if you just sit there, the plane will fly right above you.
I've never done that before.
Really? How have you done it before?
I always shoot it from the crusher that goes up and down.
Yeah.
I just do it over there.
And see, I've never known you could get it from there.
I thought that was the only place you could do it. I
No.
thought that was the only place that plane was like exposed enough to shoot it.
No, you can also do it where, so you know that off ramp where it crashes, like if you jump off the cliff and you go down to that area.
Yeah.
So
Right,
before
right.
you jump down, once the plane kind of like respawns into the, kind of do its circle,
Mhm.
there's that small window where you can shoot it. I've done it before.
Yeah.
It's just you have to like be really ready for it. It's a really tight window.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think you can realistically hit it anywhere, but it's just there's some spots easier than others.
Mhm.
And you use a homing missile? Is that what you said?
Yeah, homing or fire.
I
Homing
always
or
use
fire,
fire.
yeah.
I thought fire was the only one fast enough. 'Cause every time I use a homing, it can't keep up.
Oh, really? I didn't know there was a
Yeah.
difference in speed
Yeah,
of
so-
them, I guess.
Interesting. Okay, I'm learning a lot. That's
Yeah.
great.
Well, every day I learn something new about this game, I swear to God.
Yeah, I
It's
really,
old,
yeah, I really, one thing that always blew my mind when playing the game was like how destructive, like there's like some of the levels are in terms of like what you can do
Yeah.
to kind of like like for me, what was it, downtown? You can shoot those like little balls that are kind of off to the side, and it
Mhm.
actually blows up the buildings.
Yeah. that's
Which I
cool.
was like, oh shit, I got some some healths, and if you blow it over time, it's like, oh shit, you get a bunch of power missiles.
Yeah.
It's
there's
like
a lot of hidden
stuff like that. Like stuff
Yeah.
like that made the game enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Even the one on
destruction-
Highway Loop, really, that one's I found out pretty recently, within the last year.
that was a
Did the
pain
same
in the
thing.
ass.
You blow up that gas ball, and then it
Yeah.
rolls up and over the. I think because maybe I've probably done it in the past, but you have to almost protect it because if
Yep.
it gets
It
hit by
can get
anything, it
blown
blows
up.
up.
Yep.
Right. So like I think what level is in there? Is it sewers?
One of them.
There's some level you unlock inside there when it opens up the wall there. But I guess something I didn't know about. Like there's just always these little nooks and crannies that
Yeah.
I learned something new.
Oh,
Yeah.
speaking of the sewers, there's a hidden character that's the hardest to get of all of them, and
What?
that's the Dev Baby.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And that's
If you-
only in 2-player, right? Like split screen.
Yeah.
I think it's in any of them,
Oh.
but 2-player will. So I guess one of the devs had a kid during development, and they hid their kid inside of a pillar, like a big pillar in the sewers. And if you drive at the wall fast enough and hit it at the right angle, when the frame rate is going down a little bit, you can pass through the collision and you'll see the picture of his kid inside of there.
That's
So
so
in
weird.
2-player, because it's basically rendering the game twice, the frame rate drops a little bit,
Mhm.
just enough for you to slip in there if you hit it fast enough.
Wow.
I don't think you can
And,
play that level if you're not on split screen.
Yeah, I
think
want
it's
to
a
say it's
multiplayer
only
only.
a split screen map, or maybe TBM or TB online, maybe.
TMBO.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
could be. I bet you could do it in all the modes. I mean, he didn't make a special version for each, multiplayer, split screen, or single player. It's
Yeah.
there in all of them.
Well,
Yeah.
I think if you go to the single player challenge mode, there's only certain maps you can choose for that. You cannot select sewers or elevators, or I think Minion Stadium. Like there's a few that you're not able to select.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. But we didn't. I guess they didn't tell Sony about it, and the playtesters found it by accident, and Sony had just basically shit a brick.
Really?
Yeah, because they put something in the game without telling the testers, and
Oh.
it could have been anything in there,
Right.
Without telling Sony. It could have been D-pics, and I have seen that happen in games before.
God.
Oh my god.
There's a certain Spyro reboot that had that in it.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Oh no.
Well, what?
Send
It
pics.
wasn't the recent Ignited one. It was one that was older, much
Yeah.
older than that, from another
Oh,
studio
you
that did
scared me.
that. But yeah, I mean, you have to, when you're doing that, you have to tell them everything you're putting in the game. But I guess there was kind of a little bit of a thing that was going on at Incog where people were like putting their names into various levels, or putting their baby pictures in there and stuff like that. Because like if you look at what is it, Zorko Brothers?
Mhm.
That's Randy Zorko, who was the lead tech designer over at Incog. So it's named after him. So that kind of opened up the door for other people to kind of slip in their own, personal stuff into the games. And then when Sony got wind of the baby picture, I think that was a picture too far, and they started cracking down, saying no dev names, no dev pictures in games going forward. They got really they got a little pissy with Small Brawl when we started doing that, because
Wow.
if you look at some of the earlier builds, we're just like, oh, Black put baby pictures in. Hey, so and so, do you just have a baby? We're gonna stick it in the Christmas level, and they're just like, no,
Oh,
you cannot anymore.
that's so dumb.
I think
But
there was a
that-
version of Small Brawl that had that exact same picture in it. The one that's in
Mhm.
black.
Really?
Yeah, I think that was a placeholder for us sticking in another one, but it was kind of funny.
I like the idea that this kid, I don't know where this kid is. I hope they're okay, but just having their picture black over all these dev builds.
It was
You're
probably
right.
Scott Campbell's kid or something at the time. But I think his kid was a little bit older back then.
Could be. It's hard to say on that one. But yeah, coming back to the characters you can unlock, the last one is Minion. I like, and the thing that with Minion too, I like that it's not an unlockable in the sense of finding in the level like all the other ones. You have to just beat the game with everybody. I always like that because it gives you an incentive not only to see all the endings, unless you're of course playing the PAL version, but it gives you an incentive to play the game with every character, and then they give you a reward for it. Now, granted, he kind of sucks. Minion to play as isn't that great, but it's still cool, a little unlockable piece just to say, hey, thanks for playing the game.
Is that the first time that's happened in a Twisted Metal game? Because I know in 4 you unlock all the characters just by playing the game one time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But is this
4
the
was the
first
first with unlockables, but
Mhm.
this is the first one where it had like expansive unlockables.
Like gave you a reason to keep playing the game.
right.
Yeah,
progression
yeah,
away.
it actually had replay value. Yeah.
hmm Unless you consider the immortal difficulty unlocking TM4 like the first time.
Yeah, that's actually
Yeah.
a great point. The difficulty that it increases
Mhm.
forever is pretty unique to TM4.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, I feel like a game like Twisted Metal, there's not much to it. You're a car driving around blowing up other cars. Like for the game to give you a reason to keep doing that loop, I think that goes a very long way. That I don't know if every Twisted Metal game has that quality.
Yeah.
Because the core gameplay by itself should be enough to keep you playing, but I think myself and most gamers, like, we need a little bit extra to keep us coming back. Just give me an excuse to keep playing.
Right. And yeah, I think TM Black is one of the strongest ones to doing that. Like, or at least, sorry, up until this point, it was the strongest one for doing that. But yeah, and then the other thing too, I think is we need to touch base on is what the fuck did they do with Sweet Tooth here? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think this is still my favorite version of Sweet Tooth's truck. I don't know why. I love the design. I love the look of it. I am a big fan of it transforming into a mech. I think they went way too far in 2012, but it doesn't make any sense whatsoever that he turns into a mech. And I think this is probably where David Jaffe came up with, oh, it's all in Sweet Tooth's head, to kind of give it a reason as to why this is possible. Is like,
it's in Sweet Tooth's head, and so if it was in my head, I would want to have a
big mech truck. Literally, like, in a way, if you think about it, like, Sweet Tooth should have been a boss, because it's like a boss thing to do, to turn into a giant mech when you have a special weapon. But thankfully, they somehow made it to where he's not super overpowered. But it is funny. He's like,
pretty overpowered, though.
He's OP, but not to the degree of like Roadkill, but still pretty OP.
Yeah, the design was weird. When I first saw it, I was just like, why? And also, is Sweet Tooth a mechanical genius? Like, can he build can he build Transformers now? Like, this, he's a serial killer and a guy, like, from Cybertron? I don't know what's going on here.
Like, the universe of the game, if you want to get into it, the like Charlie Kane and son, like the Yellow Jacket driver, like, if the kid's supposed to represent Sweet Tooth, like, the kid's obviously a mechanical savant. I think his bio even says that he is. So perhaps that's
maybe
some indication that Sweet Tooth can build a giant mech monster.
Yeah.
If I'm being really generous with interpretation, I don't know. That's all I can think of.
And he also has apparently time to fucking send pieces of Axel's wife in the mail one by one, like once a month. He just has the time to do that. This makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know what that was all about, man. That was. I feel like the best way to look at Twisted Metal Black is each character exists in this, this universe, but each one is like its own short story within it. They don't connect in any way.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that you see certain characters reappear in other cutscenes, I don't think that means anything. I think it's just, they're just little, it's a big dark toy box that they're like acting out different stories with.
Well, it's just that's the whole reason, it's all in Sweet Tooth's head. None of it has to make any sense because he's insane, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is a cop out to say like, oh, you want there to be a consistent narrative? Okay, well, it's all in this person's imagination. And imagination is limitless. Like, it's just like the jerk off motion, but
this is cinema. Martin Scorsese says.
Just make the game with a consistent storyline based on who you kill. Like, anytime you kill somebody, they're permadead.
That'd be
never
cool.
Unlock him again or play him again.
Yeah, they're permanent. You can't even play him anymore.
Game. One level, there's nothing left.
That would be so sad.
So speaking of story, so supposedly this game takes place a few years before Twisted Metal 1 takes place.
Yes, that is true.
Yep. Technically, I think that's true, right? Because Twisted Metal 1 takes place in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
In Black, I think there's a few moments where it takes place in 2001. 2002. Okay, 2001.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'll get more into that later. I have some fun facts I wrote down.
So excited.
But yes.
Oh, I got some good facts that nobody knows about.
Hell yeah. The other thing too, kind of coming off of like Sweet Tooth, I felt could have been a boss in this game. Talking about the bosses, I think this is where Kong might have some fun talking shit about the bosses, but Minion and Warhawk, I mean, both of them have the same stupid shield thing. I don't understand why both of them had this shield system, and then one of them had the panels where like you have to shoot the panels all around it. Like, I can understand from a gameplay perspective, it's like, oh, it's a challenge and you have to trial and error it until you figure out how to destroy the panels, and then you can get, actually fight them to death. But when you do multiple playthroughs of the game, it's so monotonous, and it's just I feel like the bosses are the worst part of Twisted Metal Black. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass because like with minion, unless you're just you get a bunch of heavy ammo, whatever you call it.
Mhm.
I mean, you gotta spam the living hell out of him and hope you get lucky with taking out all the panels. Especially that back panel is a pain in the ass. It's
Yeah,
just-
I showed you
never
my back
turns
panel.
around.
Please respond.
Yeah, I know,
he
right?
never turns around.
yeah. It reminds me of a bad date, but whatever. God
Yeah.
damn it.
I think that Warhawk as a boss is probably the worst boss in Twisted Metal.
Yeah, Snorhawk.
I think at least Minion, it's an added wrinkle to the normal car combat. Yeah, you
Mhm.
like the panels and stuff. So I think that's interesting. It's a little annoying just because the way he moves, like the way the cars can move, makes it really difficult.
Yeah.
But Warhawk, I feel like none of my skills are tested as far as what
No.
I've expressed over the course of the tournament. Car combat with cars in 2 dimensions,
Mhm.
or 3, I guess. But like the Z-axis is never used. There's no verticality. But to
Nope.
add like a character that you cannot shoot with most weapons, like the homing was never meant. It was never intended to shoot a fucking helicopter.
Yeah.
And then like in most specials, unless you kind of cheese it, like most specials can't even really, like Junkyard Dog, Brimstone, Darkside, under normal circumstances have no
Brimstone?
ability. Yes, Brimstone. They have no ability to do damage to Warhawk. So
Yeah.
why is the thing I've been doing for 7 levels, killing 50 something opponents?
Mhm.
I now cannot use any of those skills because this fucking helicopter's a madman.
Yeah, it really feels out of place. Again, I can understand it to a degree where they were coming from. As developers wanting to make this grand scale finale, final boss. Thankfully, they didn't go overboard like TM4 with Sweet Tooth. That's just ridiculous with the challenge. But it's like they lost the key of what made the original like TM1, TM2, even TM3's final bosses memorable. They're this never before seen, really large, intimidating force of nature that is just stronger and beefier than every other character you've gone against. And I think that's more than enough in a Twist Metal game. I think that is fine. But no, we're just going to make it a helicopter that, like Drew was saying, you can barely hit with anything in the game as it is. And you can't do any damage to it unless you figure out, okay, I got to destroy these stupid tankers that look like Minion. And wait for Snorhawk to fly over you at the exact moment that you blow it up. And it does that. And then it's like Mario. We have to do it 3 times. And now he doesn't have a shield. Yay, now I can shoot him with 3 missiles in the game until he's dead. And he has barely any armor once he has no shield. He takes like 3 hits and he's dead. So I just feel it was like it's kind of lazy design with the shields. I always felt that way. Where, again, first time player, it's like, whoa, this is crazy. There's so many things I got to figure out and do. Wow, trial and error. But then once you figure it out one time, it's just boring. It's just same rinse and repeat. Do this 3 times, he's dead. Okay.
Yeah, especially when he flies around all the goddamn time. It's just stay right there. Stop moving.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think you
And
nailed
God
it.
forbid you die. It's like you got to do all of it over again.
Yep. Or if you just
It's-
drive off the level by accident like I do.
It
Yeah.
feels like if Mortal Kombat was like, hey, you fought all these regular opponents. Okay, now fight a pterodactyl for your final boss.
Yeah, pretty much.
You just
What is in
Winter
Discord?
it's like not part of the podcast, but what the fuck?
What the fuck? What is this?
It's the hidden baby, the Twisted Metal Black.
Oh, that's what they saw when they. Yeah, makes sense.
Oh my god.
Sorry, I had to.
Oh, I'll cut that out.
I
but
thought that was
funny.
Calypso for a minute and then I realized it wasn't.
Oh,
Oh, please put.
it's John.
I
Doe.
hated the Calypso design. Oh my, we didn't talk about that, but did anybody else just feel like that did not feel like Calypso in any way?
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
not like it.
I agree.
Well,
I'm
he
not a
was
huge
like
fan of it.
He was like,
And it wasn't
That
voiced.
was nice.
Yeah,
No,
that
it
was
was
one of
like
my fun
Popeye is a
facts. It's the only
skinhead.
TM where he doesn't have a voice actor.
I'm
Yeah,
saying,
it's
can you
not-
guys just get Mel back in the game? Like, come on.
Yeah, what the hell?
So
Although
you
he
guys don't
wouldn't have.
understand. It's actually Sweet Tooth. All right. It's just
Yeah,
a
it's
different
not
part of his
Calypso,
Freudian
bro. It's-
psychology.
Yeah, so in Sweet Tooth's
forgot,
head,
yeah.
Calypso's bald and doesn't have a full head of hair.
Yep.
even if they had like the long hair on the sides, it would have felt better to like bald on top, long
That's what
hair
they
on
did
the
in Head On.
sides, dark hair. It
Yeah,
would have been passable.
It was the head-on thing. Too bad if we had like that would have been a perfect segue if we had a keep sponsorship right there.
Mhm.
That would have been a perfect segue, but it's unfortunate.
So
Yeah.
then,
I think I don't like his attire. I don't like that he wears like the sports coat with no like shirt underneath, so it's like his chest is exposed. His,
Yeah.
his-
Yeah.
his
I
It's
don't know.
Daddy
forms.
Calypso, baby.
Yeah.
Mm.
He's
And,
going
like,
clubbing.
Yeah, he just,
Clubbing in
he just
Hollywood.
got done working out or clubbing.
Hey man, you go do this competition. I'm gonna go out and have a party.
And like, what is his lair? Like, you know, you ever notice that he's just sitting on like a decrepit vehicle that's like hanging from the ceiling? Like he's just sitting
Yeah,
very
I
uncomfortably
don't-
on the hood of the car.
what is the layer? Is it a warehouse
It
or is it
looks
some
like a
like
stadium, like a
Right.
football stadium almost.
yeah? And it's lit in such a weird way. Is it just like something outside of? It's like outside of reality. It's
I don't
some
know.
like other dimension. It's so bizarre. And he sits on that car that I think has SS written on like the hood scoop or something. And I don't know what that means. It looks somewhat like
Mm,
Third Reich, World War II,
maybe.
bad guy sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means. I don't know what the SS is supposed to be for.
Yeah, I don't know either. But yeah, I
That
would
always
say this is
bothered
the
me.
weakest Calypso in all the games, like by far.
It's
Not
the
weak
SS
in
Calypso
physical
he's sitting
strength.
on.
Like he's ripped, man. You see that
Well,
fucking
he's not
ab?
physically
Oh my
weak,
God.
but in terms of character lore and all that shit, like, he doesn't talk. It's so annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't feel like a wish granting being. He's just like
No,
he looks like a homeless guy. I want to get
he's
the
just
quote.
there. He's just the antidote or whatever. He's just.
I mean, are there any
cardboard cutout.
supernatural stuff in the game? I guess the voodoo dolls for Shadow, but like, is he magic
Yeah.
in this game, or is he just like well connected?
I mean, I would say he's just well connected because most like Kong said. I mean, 7 of the endings are revenge plots. All he had to do is like pay a couple people to go capture some people. You know what I mean? Bring them here, and then they can get revenge on them. Like it. He's basically just a mob guy, like a mafia like runner. He's not mystical in any way. At least
The
from what I
scissor
see.
hands. That's. I mean, it's absurd, but I think it's technically possible. We can super
Yeah.
glue a bunch of like utensils to your fists. Why not?
Right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
wouldn't
I'd
be
love
that
to
hard.
see an ending, like a cut ending, where somebody asks for like a supernatural wish, and he just like, oh shit, and just runs.
Agent Stone.
he's
I can't grant this.
Agent
I'm out
Stone
of
goes
here.
back in time. That's
Man, you
supernatural.
really are insane. I should have left you back there. Oh man. But like well, I mean you could argue again with manslaughter being like the supernatural element, I guess.
Right.
But
Well, like Agent Stone, I think is like legitimate supernatural.
oh
like,
yeah,
went
because he goes
in
back.
time.
He actually gets sent back in time. That's right. So okay,
Right.
so
Or
there
it could've
is
just been, like,
certain
he drugged
elements.
him to hallucinate that, and he just like killed him. I
Yeah.
should interpret that some way.
Yeah, there's definitely some elements there then, but I guess talking about manslaughter, there is some new characters they brought to the table. They obviously, I think they did it the right way. I think TM4 went a little bit overboard with too many new characters off the bat, and people got like, what the fuck is this? Like, where's my Spectre? Where's my Axel? I'm glad that the main cast of characters were all repeats, just different versions of them, like completely new characters. I thought that was cool. But they also included some new ones. We had Manslaughter, Junkyard Dog, Brimstone, and Crazy 8. My personal favorite's Crazy 8, but I do like Brimstone a lot. I think he's a really cool character. I think the idea is really dark but really sweet. I think his design of his vehicle is really cool. He's fun to play. I think Junkyard Dog is probably the weakest out of this cast of new people. I mean, he's okay. I think the junkyard, the tow truck vehicle is a cool concept. I just wish there would have been a different special. Like maybe you use the hook to pick up your enemy and chuck them or something. And that would have been cool. And then Manslaughter is just a giant dump truck, which I think is fine. I think it fits it's like their version of Mr. Slam in a way. But I don't know. I'm not a fan of the rocks special weapon, I guess. I think they could have done something a little bit different than that, but all around I think they're all okay in their own ways. I just really like Crazy 8. I think all around he's like the better outlaw, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree that the new specials, the new characters, were all cool and kind of a dark breath fresh of air into the franchise. They
Mhm.
could have made them play a little bit better, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that tow hook, it really would have been cool if it hooked into somebody, you could drag them for damage,
Yeah.
through the environment. Like, I've never seen that before in a game, so that would have been really
know,
cool.
right? The hook pulling somebody? That's never happened before. Never. Not once.
Nope.
Not that.
I do like Junkyard Dog as a vehicle in the game. I know that the special is it's a glorified gas can, but
Yeah.
I do think it's very beginner friendly, and I think that's the reason why it's the first vehicle
Yeah.
that's selectable in the menu.
Mhm.
So I think it has a lot of armor. It's fairly maneuverable, and the special is easy enough. But I do wish it was a bit more creative, for sure. But I think in general, most Twisted Metal specials are not that creative. Most of them they're just missiles, like different versions of missiles.
Yeah. For the most part.
I mean, Mr. Grimm, it's just a power missile, basically.
Mhm.
John Doe, or with Roadkill, that's a
5 like fire
reticle,
missiles.
right?
A bunch
Right.
of missiles.
Mhm.
Right. And Bloody Mary, like she has the homing missile, but it just goes through walls. Like they're all just upgraded versions of weapons you can already pick up.
Yeah.
Except for like Crazy 8, Axel, Yellow Jacket, those feel a bit more creative and
Specialized.
unique.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
especially with Crazy 8, I like how if you press, if you're aiming at a certain enemy, wherever, if they're front or behind you, you can do up, 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 or down, down, down 3
Mhm.
times, and you can use the upgraded purple lightning special, I like to call it.
Wow.
I know, right? You just dish out some serious damage.
I was surprised at how
pretty-
many people told me they didn't know about that in my video. I was like, really? I thought that was like one of the first things I learned in Black was I read in the manual it said to do that, like for extra damage. And
Joke's on you. I don't know how to read.
well,
Yeah.
get good.
Yeah, like I don't know. I found it cool that some characters did have like secret secondary
Yeah.
specials,
Mhm.
kind of like Bloody Mary instead of using her, or not Bloody Mary. I'm sorry,
Shadow.
Shadow, where if you did the up up up, then she can use the kind of same special as Outlaw
Yep.
or
Axel.
Axel. If you do the same thing, he kind of turns into like I don't even know what to call it. He just kind of pulls the wheels together and
Wheels of
like,
Death.
They're such a pain in the fucking ass though. I can never
I
hit
can
the
never
enemy
hit
successfully.
people with it. Yeah.
It feels like I have to freeze them. It feels like a defensive kind of like special where if you need to get out somewhere quickly, you just use it and I think you take less damage with it.
You do.
Axel's pretty gnarly too. He does the splits to like get inside the wheels. Like
Does he
he's got
really?
some flexibility, man. Yeah. If you see the animation, he like does full on splits.
Wow.
Like gets like smashed between the wheels.
That's pretty
It's
cool.
it's kind of weird. I'm just now realizing like how weird that is. Why does he have to do that? Why couldn't he just like get skinny? I don't know.
Like I just get skinny.
It just rips off his legs, and then you get him back with the next health.
Makes sense.
I mean, that'd be brutal, man. I would actually be down to see that. But I do like that this game does have those alternate specials for some of the vehicles because it just adds a bit more texture to it. Even if the Wheels of Death are pretty useless, I think Shadow special, I think it is a better version of her regular special, or it does more damage at least.
Yeah, if you can get every
It's
hit
just a
on
neat
them.
little thing. But it'd be cool if every vehicle had those alternates, which I guess they eventually did with 2012.
Yep.
But it's just why do some have it and some don't? That seems a little, I don't know. It's very strange. Was it a development thing or was it? I don't know.
Could have been lack of time, but they put so much love and care into those ones. They were like, let's just leave them in there.
I mean, I feel like the Shadow one is just an excuse to have the lingerie Easter egg.
Yeah,
Like,
I could see
she's the
that.
Oh yeah.
The only character model outside of Mr. Grimm that you see the driver, and it just happens, and they use that opportunity to make a pretty gross Easter egg.
Yeah, I gotta love that. Maybe another thing that slipped by Sony. Who knows?
Yeah, I guess actually you see him also. Where's the Axel lingerie? You know,
I want to see Speedo Axel return, man. Speedo
Yeah,
Axel
exactly.
from TM2.
Hell yeah.
It's the best
It's almost
version.
my birthday, man. Let's get some cake.
Oh my god. But yeah, kind of like moving into the fun facts here before we switch over to the online version of Twisted Metal Black, so we know we're gonna have a little bit of talk about that. I did have a lot of fun facts I wrote down, which these are, most of these are pretty like obvious, like we've all known it, but maybe somebody listening doesn't. So the first thing I wrote down is a producer of 3D and Flash animation created a series of 6 original Flash quote-unquote webisodes to promote the release of Twisted Metal Black, beginning with a No-Face episode, followed by Billy Ray Stillwell, which was Junkyard Dog, Dollface, Bloody Mary, and Mr. Grimm, as well as the series iconic character Needles Kane. Have you guys all seen those? Because they're really cool if you haven't.
Yeah, they're produced by S4 Productions, I think, and they're on YouTube. I can put the link in the Discord. We can link it on the video so people can actually check it out.
Yeah, yeah, they're
But
they're worth
very
it.
well animated, I think. Yeah, they're pretty cool.
And they're
I
scary.
don't want to spoil them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Some of them are actually fucking weird. Like they're gross and creepy, but they're cool. They
The one for Dollface really freaked me out. I don't know.
yeah.
Something about that one.
Same with Sweet Tooths. That one got me
Oh,
as a
Switch
kid.
is fucking. Oh my god. Yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, they're pretty bad.
What about?
Oh,
yeah.
I've never seen those before.
You've never seen them?
No.
Well, you're in for a treat, dude. They're cool.
Hell yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my god.
I'll find the link now. We can put it in the link of the video.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because I didn't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Shit.
Next was it is revealed after you unlock Minion that the events of Twist Metal Black takes place in the Mine of Needles. We already talked about that. This is what I was talking about earlier, that David Jaffe has commented that he came up with the idea very last minute into development, and it was never in the original plans, which does make a lot of sense. I mean, again, I think it was added as more of a cop-out to not have people questioning things, like with all the plot holes and all that. But again, like Kong was saying, and I agree with, it could have been a really cool idea that they could have really capitalized on. But sadly, it just kind of felt like a cop out in the end for me, anyway. But
I think the story that Jaffe gave about it was that they were nearing the end of production, or at least like the story writing part of it, and they realized, oh shoot, we don't have anything for Minion. Like, he's an unlockable character. We have no story for him whatsoever.
yeah,
And he was not in Utah with the studio. He's at home sick with the flu or something. And so he's like, oh fuck, I gotta just bang something out so I can take some NyQuil and just knock out.
yeah,
And that's what he came up with. Like, it was literally just like a flu fever dream that he had because he didn't want to do any work.
and he did it like in binary code or whatever, so to make it
Yeah,
mysterious.
Numeric code.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's like, what if it was a code that players can
Decipher.
they could send it into the magazines. Like, I mean, it's a cool idea. Like, I like
Yeah.
the idea of using a code to get the community involved. It's like this big secret, and if you're the one to crack the code, you have this sense of, of importance. But
Yeah,
it's not a good story.
yeah. Sadly, in the end, it kind of hindered it, but it is what it is. This one we already talked about a little bit, but in Mr. Grimm's middle cutscene flashback, it takes place in 1971 during the Vietnam War. And in the ending, he states that he has been in the asylum for 30 years. From this, it can be deducted that the game takes place in the year 2001, 4 years before Twist 101, 1995, takes place. This is further reinforced by newspaper clippings and the manual, dated to late 2000/early 2001. So, kind of interesting that it's a prequel to the very first game, yet Calypso again looks nothing like he does in Twist Metal.
Or it was just like overlooked entirely.
It could have
was
been,
unintentional.
yeah, it could have been easily overlooked. It's hard to say on that one, but it's like, I don't know, maybe it was on purpose because Calypso's face isn't burnt, so maybe this is supposed to be like all before he got burnt or something, and that's what, but that he grew hair because he got burnt. I don't know.
I don't think so, because the TM2 comic says like why his face is burnt was some car accident he had, and then he began the tournament because the devil like instilled in him powers to run it.
And I like that idea. I love that story. That it makes the most sense.
Yeah, if only they actually ran with it instead of abandoning it immediately.
Right. Yeah, I don't. Such a bummer, but
one thing I've heard about Black is that it's supposed to be like a reimagining of Twisted Metal 1, which makes it interesting that it doesn't take place the same year.
Yeah.
But it has a lot of the same characters. A lot of the maps do line up pretty close to a map in Twisted Metal 1. Like Riverside or River Park Rumble is basically just the downtown level. Highway Loop is Freeway Free for All. There's a few others. Suburbia is Suburbs.
Yep.
So there's definitely a lot of parallels between 1 and Black. So I think maybe that's just what it was. Black was supposed to be just a reimagining.
Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely could be. But again, like you were saying, I just wish they would have kept with the story of Calypso from like TM2, because it made the most sense.
The comic was actually really good.
Yeah, it's well thought out too. But oh well. This was kind of cool. Have you guys ever played Downhill Domination? I love that game. I still play it on my Steam Deck.
Oh yeah,
Twist Metal Black.
I worked on that.
Yeah, that's right. You said that. That's so cool. Because yeah, Twist Metal Black can be seen on a billboard in that game, which was also made by Incognito. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Speaking of billboards in Twisted Metal, on the abandoned rooftops level of Twisted Metal Black, there's a
Mhm.
series of billboards like on like some
It's like an
side of the map.
Illuminati one, right?
But exactly, there's an Illuminati one, and people decided to take that to mean that David Jaffe had some knowledge of 9/11 happening before it happened.
Oh my god.
Because there was some sort of I don't know if it was like a press thing or if it's just something he took by himself, but like him standing beneath the World Trade Center,
Mhm.
you know, like months before the attacks. And so people put the two and two together. Oh, he took a picture at the World Trade Center, and there's an Illuminati symbol, and there's a plane crash in the game. He must have
Yikes.
known something.
Yeah, that's yikes. I don't know. I don't
And he made the joke that like, oh yeah, you know, a bunch of nerds from Utah like definitely had something to do with like this, like the worst attack in American history.
Yeah.
Bizarre how people put those things together.
Where was the Illuminati poster? I forgot about that.
It's on abandoned skyscrapers. So if you go to the side of the map where the church is and you drop down, there's like that extra, I don't know, platform,
Mhm.
like a bunch
Mhm.
of little ramps. So there's a bunch of billboards there. So there's
Yep.
one for like Hot Blood, which is like it's like a coffee ad, but there's like graffiti over it.
Yep.
There's a few other ones there, but there's Illuminati that's there. It has like an eye that says like they're watching or something like that.
Yeah, I can guarantee that was an incog artist,
Joke.
and Jaffe knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
Like they're just, what can we put in here? Oh, I know, I'm a conspiracy nut. I'm gonna put an Illuminati thing on the billboard. It's they slip and stuff like that all the time. Like Jaffe would only come to the studio for like a week every month or every other month, so
Mhm.
he wasn't super involved with the day-to-day going on at Incognito.
Yeah.
So little things like that are gonna slip in without him ever knowing about it.
Yeah, it's funny that they all just immediately went to those conclusions. Like, okay, bro, maybe you need to touch some
Jaffe
grass.
came up with the whole Minion story, so I think there's
There is some, yeah, there's a
Genius.
correlation there. So now it all makes sense. So nearly every character in the driver selection appears very different than they do in their cutscenes. Some differences are almost unnoticeable without further investigation, such as Sweet Tooth being more muscular. Then see, this is where in my mind I'm like, Sweet Tooth is ripped, but then like Winter was saying, like in the actual cutscene at the end, he's not. He's kind of fat. But
Big old chungus boy.
yeah,
I mean,
so it's like
we
they
were all
had two
more
different
fit at one
versions
time,
of him.
you know?
They had like a ripped daddy version, and then they had like the big dad bod version. So kind of
Just think you sit in
interesting.
the asylum 3 months, you know, who knows?
Yeah,
Yeah, 3 months in a nut
they
house.
they
makes
feed him
you,
good in there.
Shut
Um,
up and eat, you motherfucker.
I mean, and that's probably because they had different artists on the cinematic team and different ones
Yeah,
in the game studio, and they weren't communicating very
Oh,
well.
100%.
yeah. Same with like TM3 and 4, the same issues, I think.
Right. 'Cause I'm sure that
Dollface's-
diorama for the main menu probably came about pretty early,
Yeah,
and then everything else sort of came after.
right. Dollface's mask is a lot more intimidating, I guess, in the character selection screen. I have to look at that.
Subjective.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that to like if I remember that at all. But others are very obvious, such as Bloody Mary's ghostly face, and I do remember this. Like in the character selection, if you go to the info of her, she looks horrifying looking. Like she looks really weird.
Like a Tim Burton
mhm.
character.
Yeah, and then like obviously in her cutscene, she looks pretty. So it's just kind of funny that they completely changed her look. And then yeah, Agent Stone as well. Like completely looks different. Like in my opinion, I could be wrong. He looks just like a regular white guy in the character selection screen. Like it looks
Yeah.
like the Agent Stone from the TV show, but in the actual cutscenes, like I think he's a black guy, right? So it's just it's interesting that they completely changed like everything about him. But I don't know.
No,
It's
Crazy 8 looks pretty different. Like the way his face is sewn up is different than the cutscenes
yep.
for sure. Billy Ray also like in his cutscenes.
Yeah, he looks
horrifying.
way different. He looks way worse in the cutscenes than he does in the
Yeah,
character
like in the main
selection.
menu, he looks bad, but it's like
Way
you know,
more
like Alabama bad.
yeah, he looks more humanoid, I guess, like more normal.
Alabama normal.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
kind of cool. I think somebody also said like Axel is seen in like the explosion in the background or something of the opener area. So it's like it's shown that he was originally supposed to be a regular character, not an unlockable. But they changed that.
I think Minion on his splash screen there,
Mm-hmm.
like he's exploding a car. He's like driving through a car, Wasn't that supposed? Isn't that one of the characters?
I think
He's
that's Axel
running through?
too. if I
Is it
remember.
Axel? Okay.
Yeah, but I can't remember. It's been a while since I heard it. Maybe somebody in the comments of this podcast can give us some insight on that. But and yeah, we talked about this before as well with you know kind of having our issues with Calypso, but this is the only Twisted Metal where Calypso does not speak during his own narrative, but as seen on some of the characters' endings, such as Billy Ray's, Preacher, Sweet Tooth, John Doe, etc., they say what Calypso is said to them, not said from Calypso, which again, I find that really weird. I wish they would have had some voice actor for Calypso in this game to give him more personality, but some reason they didn't. And then the last thing, which I've pointed this out a few times, the music from this game changes depending on the situation, similarly to Twist Metal 1. Most stages have songs for when you're not in a fight, for when you're in a fight, and when there's only one enemy left. Now, I didn't know about the last part. I didn't know there's a different song for when there's 1v1s, which is kind of cool. But I've always loved the ambient music in this game. Like, all of them are horrifying. Like, when you're not near anybody, you're like, God damn, I gotta find somebody to fight because I hate this song. It's making me scared.
I think in general, this game's presentation is the best thing about it.
Yeah.
And that's in even like from the main menu to the music to the atmosphere of the game in the cutscenes. Like it's so stylized and so cool and so well directed. And the music I think is the best in the franchise. And I'm sure we can argue that maybe TM2 is more classic or TM4 has the better music because it's licensed or whatever. But this game, it's orchestral, it's cinematic, it's epic, it's haunting, and some of it's like pretty cool. I like the Prison Passage music. I think is fucking dope.
It is
Kicks
cool.
ass. It goes hard.
And I've heard people argue like or say, "Wow, you could just replace the Twist Metal Black music with generic orchestral music, and it's the same thing." And
I'm not a music genius or anything, but I don't necessarily think that's true. I think there's a certain tone.
It was specifically made to fit the vibe of the game. You couldn't just put like a random orchestra tune, so it wouldn't fit.
Because it's like industrial. It's like grimy. Right. It's not just like loud blaring strings and horns.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely from people that just don't understand like artistic values.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I've heard before that the composer for this game was the same as the one that did Invader Zim. I don't know if that's true, but the main menu does give me that vibe.
Yeah, I can hear that. Good show, by the way. Underrated.
Oh yeah,
hell yeah.
I was impressed with the way the music changed from atmospheric to high action. That's very smart sound design because obviously you don't want it pumping all the time, but you also don't want it very kind of flat and atmospheric when you're in the middle of combat because that's just going to kill the overall flow of the combat itself.
Right, exactly.
Okay, I do have confirmation that the composer for Twisted Metal Black, his name is Kevin Manthei, and he did do Invader Zim. Hell
yeah, that's so cool.
Including a bunch of other pretty prominent shows, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Johnny Test, Ben 10, so a lot of cartoons.
Wow.
As well as Spy Kids. So, hey, there you go.
Great shows. And movies.
Yeah.
Wow, how did he get in the games?
He's done quite a bit of different movies, movies, television, and video games. For video games, he's done like Civilization 2, Shark Tale the game. So I think that's a pretty poppin' resume. Kung Fu Panda. A lot of licensed stuff.
Those are some good games too.
Damn.
I found his YouTube channel the other day because somebody in the Discord posted a video that he commented on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a Twist Metal Black video, but he commented on it saying like, it's so cool that people 20 years later are still enjoying my music that I produced for this game or whatever. And I checked out his channel. He still uploads like guitar covers and stuff, and he sings.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And cool. He's from Minnesota, Nick. You got
hey, there we go.
Oh, all right.
All right.
Got to contact this man, get a soundtrack for the Discord.
I do. That'd be sick.
Yeah, shout out to Kevin Manthei.
Yeah. If you're listening, hit me up, dude. We'll have a conversation. All right. I guess before we get into the Twist Metal Black Online, should we give our ratings of just the single player or the main game first?
Can I do one more fun fact?
Yeah.
Me too.
it might be a little silly, but I don't. It's probably a limitation of the artist. They don't want to like make hair for the characters, but most of the characters in this game are bald. The male characters.
Hey, right.
John Doe.
Yeah.
Crazy Eight. Sweet Tooth, of course.
Axel.
Calypso, Axel, Cage. A lot of baldness in this game. Well represented.
Manslaughter.
Does that mean the Illuminati don't have hair? That's confirmed.
It could be.
Maybe
Mr.
Jaffe's
I
onto
mean,
something.
His head is the skull now. That's bald.
He just had God of War in his mind. You know, he's bald.
There you go. Yeah, I think Jaffe just likes bald.
He just likes bald.
Maybe I should pop into a stream one day. Maybe he'll let me on.
Maybe.
Hell yeah.
Either that or hair's really hard to do, and they skip it as much as they can back then.
Yeah, I think
that's probably what it was. It's like Agent Stone, I think, does have hair, but they keep the helmet on. I think just to avoid
he literally has the
modeling
helmet
hair.
the entire time. So
Yeah, back in the PS2 days, hair is a pain in the ass, and it always looks terrible. So
yeah,
that would be my guess, but I know that Jaffe also likes the bald look on his characters.
That's probably true. Well, even like Dollface and Bloody Mary, like they have hair, but it's concealed. Dollface has the mask, and Bloody Mary has the veil.
Yep.
So I don't know who even has hair. Who has visible hair?
Billy Ray.
Billy Ray.
Billy Ray and the woman in Billy Ray's ending cutscene, or one of the cutscenes that cheated on him.
And the
she
boy,
has short hair.
She has short hair.
Son, Charlie.
Interesting. Okay, that was my fun fact. Was just the hair thing.
Expand the production another 6 months, you can get another head of hair on somebody. Just pick
there you
your
go.
character.
That's all I'm asking for, man. Just I want to know this world has hair. So it's so dark. It's all bald.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. I have a couple of fun facts. I don't know if they should all go in, but I'll put them out there, and we'll see if we should put them into the podcast or not.
Okay.
In my talks with Jaffe and Scott, they both played the crap out of Vigilante 8.
Ooh.
You got to play an amazing game to make a crappy one.
You know what I mean? Oh, damn, man.
My God.
Damn.
So Scott liked Vigilante 8. It's one of the reasons he ended up hiring me. And also because he wanted to kill the Vigilante franchise. Because if they took me, then they thought that the series was going to die off. And
it did.
But not for those reasons. I think Luxo was done making car combats and wanted to try new things at that point.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to continue making car combat games.
Was it a big confidence booster to get poached like that?
What's that?
Was it a big confidence booster to get poached like that, to know how valuable you are?
A little bit. So I started out with Shannon Studstill. She gave me my first break in video games back at Black Ops Entertainment a very long time ago.
Black Ops?
And she went on to become the head of Sony. And she knew, or Sony, Santa Monica, and she knew Jaffe very well. And when they heard that I was working for the competition, they pulled me in for an interview.
Oh.
And I think it was mostly her pushing, because the interview I had with Jaffe and his team was very contentious. And I was getting a lot of attitude from them in my interview there. And it was not good. I'm not going to go into details, but it was a rough interview. Like, they were sticking it to me pretty hard during that interview.
Wow.
So I left that going, holy crap, I don't know why they pulled me in there just to like insult me and shit on me during that interview.
Yeah.
And then that's when Scott reached out to me and basically flew me out to Incog in Salt Lake City, Utah, and basically decided to hire me in order to kind of kind of take the wind out of Vigilante 8 series, but at the same time, and I didn't know this, I guess to irk Jaffe, because those two were not getting along. So if Jaffe didn't want me, he was going to bring me on to Incog instead to work on the Twisted Metal series.
Wow.
So that was kind of an interesting, kind of line throughout my career there with, working with Shannon and then interviewing with Jaffe and then eventually getting picked up with Scott to do Black Online and then also Twisted Metal Small Brawl.
Yeah.
But I definitely had some conversations with Jaffe over the years, initially during when he was looking at Vigilante 8, and he had some good insights into it. He didn't like the how seeking our weapons were. He didn't like the 360-degree turreting of the weapons or how the attacks go level wide. And he said that took all the skill out of the game. And I thought about it, and I was like, you know what, you're right. I didn't have control over those particular things at that time, but I thought it was a pretty good insight. And it was kind of an interesting leader into like, oh, I see what you're talking about now that I saw Twisted Metal Black up at the Incog studio, where you're leaning really hard into skill shots.
Right.
And, the reticle targeting and very limited range weapons that required a lot of, aiming and driving and precision. And I saw the game that you were going for, and I perfectly understood where he was coming from with his critique of V8. And I thought it was pretty good, actually. And I was just like, if I ever make another car combat again, I'm actually going to follow some of those rules. Because they looked at Vigilante 8 so heavily, I think that is where the endurance mode came from for Black.
Yeah.
Because correct me if I'm wrong,
yeah.
I think that's the first time it showed up in any of their
It
games,
is.
and we put it in the 64 version of Vigilante 8, and I knew, according to them, that they were analyzing everything in our game.
Sweet. So you brought like the best, in my opinion, that was one of the most like fun game modes I played a lot back in the day. Was endurance.
Cool. Thank you.
So hell yeah.
So
Another
original
fun
zombies
fact.
mode.
Yeah,
Literally.
The original Zombies was in N64 V8.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Thanks, Nintendo.
What other goodies? I remember conversations when I was up at Incognito that Thumper was being considered as a character.
Yeah.
And they decided not to put him into the game because they couldn't figure out how to fit him into the universe very well. And they couldn't figure out a good, compelling story around that particular character, so it never made it in.
There's actually concept art of that of that version of Thumper with it's a lowrider, but it's like covered in graffiti.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna try to find the picture so we can share it on the video if you don't mind.
I'm
It's
doing so
actually
much
pretty
editing
sick
with this
looking.
video.
Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry. I put a lot on your plate.
God damn.
You better put Baby Roadkill in there.
All for the better
Yeah,
experience of the
that's
viewer.
the Thumper.
Oh shit, wrong.
Oh,
I could probably find that. I think I actually did a video, like a short, because I did a live stream where I went and found that.
If you just type into
Probably.
Black Thumper, it's the first thing that pops up.
There you go.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. It looks pretty cool.
That's all I got for now, I think. Yeah.
All right. Well, very cool. Always awesome to hear little fun facts from like the actual, inside Incognito. Awesome.
Insider information.
I suppose you could leave the terrible interview thing in if you want. See if he comes on.
we'll see.
Edit it in a nice way.
We'll see. Don't, and that goes to everybody listening. Don't go spreading rumors, okay? Don't go to his videos. Don't do nothing.
I know.
Just,
that is my worry.
that's
right
just
there,
if he
like...
comes here and listens, then that's cool. But yeah. All right. But anyway, I guess going into should we give our rating now of just the game by itself, and then we can do a separate rating?
Yeah, they are different games, so like
Yeah, 100%.
Kind of just completely different games.
Yeah. So I guess if I was to do mine, well, I'll do mine last. Drew, how about you give us your rating of Twisted Metal Black?
Oh man,
shit.
it's all downhill from here. Yeah, 10 out of 10. Perfect game.
10 out of 10,
Can't be any better.
I feel like you've given 10 out of 10s for every game so far, haven't you?
No, in fact, I've given way over a 10 for
Yeah,
most
you
of these
give
games.
989s out of.
So this is actually a pretty
98999.
reasonable score for me.
That's fair.
But I'm pretty biased. I've grown as a content creator off of on the shoulders of Twisted Metal Black, and just the way that I appreciate it, and I try to bring as much as I can to it. I want people to appreciate it in a different way with my videos and stuff, because I look at it a different way.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy to say, oh, it's all revenge stories, it's all dumb, it's inside Sweet Dude's head. But for me, I try to look at those stories a bit differently, and I just love the atmosphere, the darkness, the texture. It's unique to me, and I love that style. I think that like dark surrealist style really speaks to me. Like there's an artist, Zdzisław Beksiński, who like the art that he draws, he's late now, but that style really speaks to me. And I think Twisted Metal Black embodies that style and invites you to imagine more about it in ways that other Twisted Metal games, they're very surface level, I guess. There's not much more that is left the imagination, but there is with Twisted Metal Black. And for that's why I give it such a high score. The gameplay is fine.
Yeah.
The stories on their surface are fine. But the way that it inspires me to think about it makes it a 10 out of 10 for me. Also, I've written like I don't know, 50,000 words in like videos over the course of content creation. Like I need something to show for it. So yeah, 10 out of 10.
Hell
My
yeah.
God.
Respect. Winners. What do you think?
What's up? I think it's a really solid game. I like some of the skill shot weapons they introduced, like getting a max hit for like reticles, like pretty rewarding, and feels nice to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of like, I swear, if you ask like teen to me, I'd probably say like a 10 out of 10. But kind of like now, since I'm more mellow, I would say like an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10. I think there was a lot of good improvements that they made over previous games. Like if you die 3 times, you don't have to,
Yeah.
restart the whole playthrough. That's really annoying. I really appreciated the cinematics for what they were, for especially for a 2001 game. Like they really look pretty damn clean.
Yeah.
Going back to it, it's like they kind of went with what Twisted Metal 3 and 4 did, and they just took it up a notch in terms of the graphics on that. But I just don't like the Calypso in this one. I think the hit detection, not the hit detection, but the collisions is kind of jank. I mean, sometimes I don't even know if the hill I'm going up on is okay or not.
Yeah.
It's there's some minor frustrations with the game, and the AI is just completely unfair. But in terms of like characters, story, and some of the special weapons are really fun. Minions okay. Warhawk, fuck that guy. But yeah, honestly, I really do like playing this game from time to time in terms of like how everything is balanced out. But yeah, I would say a solid 8.5, 9 out of 10, or 9 out of 10. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Definitely fair. Kong, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts.
It's really tough. I mean, like this game does things I really like and things like I really hate at the same time. But we're gonna be talking about like Black Online, which I think just makes Black irrelevant. Honestly, like the single player is kind of just like I don't see a point of playing it. If you can play, if you have the ability to play online,
Yeah.
you have to rate it as like a just say it was anyone could just pick up and play Black Online. Like I would put the Black single player at like a 5 or a 4, honestly.
Damn.
Like it's boring. Like when I play the game, I want to fall asleep. The bosses are boring. Like the game is so gameplay centric. The best way to experience it is just playing online. Like I don't see a reason to ever play that ever, unless you like want to touch yourself in the bathroom to the stories. But other than that, I don't really care.
If you excuse me for a moment.
It's just I mean I rate Black Online very highly, so
Yeah.
I don't see the point to playing this, honestly.
That's a fair point
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Especially
definitely
after all, we've all played it before. Like
fair. Right.
my thoughts of Black Online completely changed in how I view Twisted Metal Black.
Yeah, same here. And again, we'll get more of that in a minute. All right, so pretty harsh score, but understandable. 4/5 out of 10. Dave, what do you give the single player experience of Twisted Metal Black?
Yes.
V8 out of 10.
Could have had a V8 out of 10.
I love what they did with the new weapons, the reticles, skill shots. I felt like they really kind of pushed that envelope of heightening up the combat, which I thought was great. I'm not a huge story guy, so I didn't care that much about the stories of Black overall, but I am a gameplay and level design guy. And I love the vehicles they did. I thought that they were really cool, and they kind of followed a lot of tenets of like giving them different silhouettes and different looks, and kind of really giving each of the vehicles an identity, which I thought was really cool. I do agree with the comments earlier in the podcast where the specials were not that special, in that they were just different types of missiles that were kind of different seeking different damage, and then had a new visual to them. I thought they could have pushed that a lot more. I thought the level design was rather lackluster in this, except for a couple of them. They flowed well, but I felt like they could have done cooler things in there. Like Suburbs is painful for me to play, and I felt like they could have done better with the team size they had. But other than that, like, it was an amazing entry into PS2 and kind of reviving car combat and coming out strong. I wasn't a huge fan of the color palette in there, and I understand like this is the style, but I still feel like they could have punched up in certain ways to kind of make it pop a bit more. It didn't feel so much dark as muddy to me, and that kind of aesthetic just doesn't appeal to me. Because I do like games that pop visually and that are very entertaining. Visually in that way. So
For Snowy Roads, how can you not think it doesn't pop?
One map
is one big pop.
I could see the blue in those snowflakes coming down. Just a hint. Just a hint. That being said, like, those guys did an amazing job. Like, they wrote an engine from scratch. They made a really good game. The endings, from what I hear from everybody else, are fantastic. They pushed the genre quite a bit. I'm going to give it an 8.5 to a 9.
Nice.
Side praise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I really like that team. Like, they were really good people. And they didn't really crunch on the game either, from what I understand.
Good.
So it's an impressive achievement to make something like this and not crunch on it too much.
Yeah, for sure. And being that it was like was it a launch title with the PS2? I know it was very early in the PS2's life.
It was very early, which gets you a lot of attention. Sony usually tries to position its in-house titles or first parties to be at launch. Yeah. So you've got a lot of games to select from to make it worthwhile to buy that console.
Right.
But B, to also make sure that they do high sales because they're the only game in town at that point.
Yeah.
That's true.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, I think PS2 is a little weird in the fact that when it was released, it was kind of seen more as a DVD player. There really wasn't that many games, but when 2001 hit, finally Twisted Metal Black came out, and it was one of the first few games that really showcased what the console was able to do.
Mm-hmm. And it
still There's even a review I'm reading here from Game Power. I don't know if that's a prominent magazine, but they said exactly that. Winters, they say this is perhaps the finest use of the PlayStation 2's power so far.
Hell yeah.
So far, but I'd argue Metal Gear Solid 2 kicked its ass. So
right, but I think that was at the time the game came out. So I think early on in the PlayStation 2 life cycle that they say at that point this was the showcase for the console.
Yeah, it wasn't a high bar.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think TM2 Black is really impressive. Yeah,
I think it is, but like
60 frames is amazing.
Yeah, 60 frames per second is really good.
Consistent 60 frames.
Yeah.
And their lead tech guy too. Instead of like using C+ or C++, like a lot of other studios were doing, he wrote all the stuff in binary. I was just like, oh my god, what are you doing? That's crazy. And he looked at me one day and he goes, job security. And I was like, oh.
Job security.
Jesus.
It's really hard to do for regular programmers, apparently.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's one of those things like definitely like winners. If I looked at it back when I was 16, 17, playing it all the time, even coming back to it at first, I would have given this game a 10 out of 10. It was my favorite Twist Metal of all time. But after coming back to it a lot, making content on it, playing all the other Twist Metals together for content, and getting the feel for all those, especially ones that I didn't give enough love to as a kid that I do now and appreciate. My score definitely has gone down a little bit, but not a lot. I still very much love Twist Metal Black. I still like coming back to it. I still have a good time with it. I think the biggest thing for me is the gameplay. I think it feels fluid, it feels fast, frantic, fun. I don't really have many complaints with it unless I'm playing it in hard mode. And in that regard, like I said before, it just feels unfair to the player. It's not fun. Where medium, I feel, is pretty balanced to a degree. I think it's definitely the game mode or the difficulty they really expect the player to play on, and it definitely feels that way. I feel the level design definitely is on the mid to low tier. There's not really a level in this game that really sticks out to me as like amazing, except for Snowy Roads, because it feels so different with its color palette and everything really sticking out. And then I'm actually one of the people that praises Suburbs. I love Suburbs. I don't know why. I just do. I have a lot of fun with it. I like how big it is. I like all the different areas you can go to. I've always really enjoyed it, but I can also understand 100% why people don't like that level. And then you got Crazy 8. I love Crazy 8. I've always loved his design. I like the electricity field around the car. I think, I don't know. There's a lot of great characters in this game. They brought back Axel, and Yellow Jacket's fun to play as. Brimstone's really cool. You know, they got some really cool cars around this time and good designs, and special weapons could have been better, but at least they made Sweet Tooth a goddamn like mech, so that's cool. But yeah, the stories are also really fun, even though, again, as an adult coming back to this, I've now realized a lot of them are monotonous, a lot of the same revenge plots, which does degrade it now in my eyes, but I still have a special place in my heart for a lot of the stories, and for them being dark and dreary and gory, and I'm a huge horror fan, so that kind of gives them a leg up in my opinion. But yeah, Calypso is pretty mid. So with all that together, all that, into one score, I don't think I can give it higher than an 8 out of 10. I want to give it a 9. I really do, but there's too many things that really do, for at least now looking at it objectively, do bring it down a couple notches for me. So a solid 8 out of 10. Very good. Not amazing, but it's a very good game. It's still a lot of fun. It's definitely in my top 3 Twisted Metals, but yeah, I think it's pretty good.
So, I think it's worth pointing out too that the Metacritic, like the aggregate of all the reviews, it has a 91.
Yeah, it's definitely the highest
among
rated in the series in terms of critics' reviews.
Right, and I think even for the PlayStation 2, I think it's in the top 25 highest rated PS2 games.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of wild.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy that a car combat game can reach those dizzying heights.
Yeah, because I feel like critics have always kind of shat on the car combat genre.
Definitely,
but
I'm gonna find out right now where it fell as far as is it number 40th highest ranked video game for the PlayStation 2, above such titles as NCAA 2002, Madden NFL Football 2001.
Bruh. Yeah, I mean there is a lot
Underground more score than Black, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, now, especially considering.
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, especially considering and when it released. I mean, 2001, there was a lot of good games that came out the PS2 that year. I mean, you had Silent Hill 2, Metal Gear Solid 2, Gran Turismo 3, Ace Combat 4, Grand Theft Auto 3. I mean, the fact that I was able to do that well was pretty outstanding.
Like of the top 6, 5 of them are from 2001. You have GTA 3, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, MGS 2, GTA San Andreas, and Gran Turismo 3.
Jesus.
All from 2001. So 2001 was a huge year for games. So for Twisted Metal Black to be considered in that conversation is pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an achievement for sure.
All right, Black Online.
Yeah. So do you want to take it away? Because I know you said you had some certain topics you want to talk about with it.
I'm not as good at this as you guys are, so I kind of need I need to riff off of one of you guys. You've been doing this much longer than I have.
Well, I guess I'll ask you a question. Goodrich. Twisted Metal Black Online, like you were the lead creator on there, correct? Or the director?
Yeah, I was the lead game designer on Twisted Metal Black Online. Yes.
Like, how did you get approached to head that project?
Oh, so actually, this goes back to Small Brawl, where I interviewed for the Twisted Metal Black position at Sony, didn't get it. Scott picked me up, and then they had me up there working on some stuff for a new Twisted Metal project that was going to be after Black. And I was doing all these kind of very, interesting designs and trying to push the envelope a bit on that. But then Small Brawl got handed to me at that point. So we made that project, and then at the completion of that, basically Incognito and Jaffe were so burnt out on making Twisted Metals that they didn't want to do the Black Online version, which was basically a game that they wanted to retrofit for online play. So Sony wanted to grab 1 or 2 games real quick and make them online ready so they could kind of push their their peripheral for the dial-up modem. So they basically said, let's give it to the small brawl team because Incog doesn't want to work on it, Sony doesn't want to work on it, Jaffe doesn't want to work on it. So we got it, and we started building out the online play for it. And Kirk Baum, who's a very talented programmer and really sharp dude, started talking to me, and we kind of riffed a little bit. And he's like, "Yeah, we got to add more to this game than just making this an online version of Black, which isn't going to work, purely as it is right now." So we started talking about adding things like new modes and new relics and different ways to score the game and things like that. So we started just adding the stuff to the game on the side as we were building the online play for it. So that's kind of how that came about. We just rolled off a small brawl onto this, and we kind of all kept the same titles and positions when we went on to move, or when we moved on to this project to make the online version so that Sony could sell their hardware.
Was it exciting being on the forefront of online gaming? Because at that time, especially for consoles, like online was not the big thing. So was that exciting, or was that stressful, or like what was the emotion there? Like, was it inspiring? Like, you want to do the most you can? Or
well, I mean, any game you want to work on, you want to put the most into it, like your best work, because that's what the consumer's going to see. But being a dial-up modem game, initially, like, we could only support 4 people at a time. There was all kinds of weird issues around connectivity and players actually appearing where they're supposed to in the game world. So it had a lot of challenges we'd never dealt with before. Like, we're just like, holy shit, we haven't done this before. We're actually not sure a lot of other people have done this before on, a console, especially like PS2. And so that was a bit nerve-wracking. But then also kind of the other thing was, most games, you'll get paid based on the sales of the game. You'll get money for initial development, and then if the game sells well, you get like bonuses and royalties and things like that, and it usually spins into a next project. But Sony, from what I understood, their perspective on this was, this is not going to work like a normal game. We're basically going to move units of the dial-up modem along with the game, but the game is not like a separate entity. So whatever the units sell, Sony keeps, and they just paid us a flat fee for making this game. So they just paid for the development, but there was really no back end, and there was no basically there's going to be no longevity to it. It's not like we're going to move on to like a Twisted Metal Black Online 2 or 3 or 4. Like, we knew this was just a one-off to sell this particular piece of tech for them, this hardware.
Do you feel like it was just like a tech demo at that point?
It very much was. Like, Sony in the past, and not so much these days, but they basically will make games to highlight their technology. And whatever that is, like a camera, dial-up modem, console, or whatever it is, to show that, we are number one in the console wars.
Yeah.
And their tech is very good. And they usually, in the past would sponsor, games that were very visually impressive, but didn't necessarily have to play well. Just as long as they could say, we push, X amount more particles than any other console, or more polys, or we can, stream music, or whatever it was back then.
That's pretty cool, especially like Drew was saying, being kind of the forefront of online gaming on the PS2, because what I remember at that time, was SOCOM out yet on PS2?
I think SOCOM might have been 2003, wasn't it?
Okay, yeah, that maybe was later, because I remember that was like a big one for PS2 online, but otherwise, at least growing up, I cannot recall
2002.
another game that had a prominent online force on the PS2 other than like Black and SOCOM. But obviously, there's probably more than that. But I don't remember people talking about it.
They had different studios working on it, and I'm sure sharing code to make sure that this, the peripheral was the best it could be. I remember playing EverQuest on the PS2 via dial-up.
Oh,
in Utah. So SOCOM, EverQuest, us, we were all working on this stuff, and they basically, I mean, since they're all making for Sony, they would all share, findings as to how to make this the best,
That's
online
nice.
experience that they could. But we were definitely one of the front runners on that.
Yeah.
And it was kind of neat. Like Sony didn't have their designers over in Santa Monica really didn't have much involvement in this, so it gave me and Kirk and the rest of the team to basically just take the ball and run with it, kind of like we did a little bit with Small Brawl. During development, it's just like, hey, you want to put in this relic thing? Yeah, how hard is it? Okay, cool. Do we have an artist to make the relics? No. Okay, I'll make it. And then, or we'll have Dan do it or somebody like that. And we just kind of all just pitched in and we made the relics, and Kirk and his guys, along with Mike Bartholomew, like made the abilities for the relics and changed the overall, feeling of the game, because just releasing this as an online version of Basic Black, where you're only fighting like 3 other people, and even then it's kind of sketchy, it wasn't going to be good enough for our team to do. Like, we wanted to push that envelope and give a new experience, as far as, if you're going to buy this modem, we're going to give you something cool to go with it.
Was it kind of empowering when you were developing that to know, because it was so early, that ideas or little, iotas of things that you put into the game would carry on into future online titles? Like, is there something that you see like in a Call of Duty game today or something or whatever that you're like, hey, I thought of that way back in 2002. That would, I guess that's my DNA just buried in there so deep. Was that empowering at the time that could be the possibility?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that just happens with every designer. You're never that forward thinking to think that
this could be,
oh my God, this is going to make generations of, games in the future, and this is going to outlive me by 100 years because they're all going to be using my designs.
Yeah.
You just don't think that way. And honestly, you're not sure that that's always the case, because, designers through testing and creating games will generally come to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
Slightly different variants on it, but it's tough to say that I came up with this first unless I know they were looking at my stuff and they had admitted to looking at my stuff and got ideas from it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Just because it was so early in online that there wasn't like a settled, like, this is the way online should be. So to like strike on that one idea that's like, okay, that just makes sense, let's carry on. Like the first person to design like the game controller. Like, there's a lot of weird ass designs before we landed on like the basic premise that it is now.
Yeah.
So do you feel like maybe there's some possibility that you would be the one to come up with like the model for multiplayer? Or was it just, let's just do something and hope that it works?
I think it was just, let's do something and hope that it works.
Yeah.
Because I think our only real task was just to make this thing online. And we really kind of deviated from the edict from Sony, and like, we're going to make new levels. We're going to add relics. We're going to do collector mode. We're going to, make a different scoring method. It's not just kills. It could be damage. It could be, X amount within time. It could be like the last standing mode, which I know Nick's a fan of. Like, we peppered in all these things without really being asked to from Sony. It was like, we want to do this. We want to make it cool.
Yeah.
We definitely pushed that, those designs, and they worked out pretty well. I remember, probably halfway through development, Sony started to take notice and say, hey, these relic things are kind of cool. And then they started to give a couple suggestions once they started to kind of see the nugget of what we had slipped into the game.
Yeah. I guess a really good question for if anybody out there listening has not played Twisted Metal Black Online, probably the biggest question they'd have is, well, I've heard from everybody that they have different ratings for Twisted Metal Black, the regular single player version versus the online. So what are like the biggest things in your opinion, as one of the creators of it? What are some of the biggest changes from the original game to the online version, other than obvious like just going against friends?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's funny that there's 2 different ratings out there, because everybody seems to forget there was a Twisted Metal Black Online, and also that it was a very different version of Twisted Metal Black Online.
Yeah.
And some of those changes that I think that kind of improved the rating for it was because the dial-up was so slow, and we had to go for minimum spec. So dial-up was our minimum spec, and we could only have 4 players. And if you've ever played these old games, or which I'm sure you guys haven't, the information packets are so slow that if you see a player in front of you, they may actually be 30 to 50 feet left, right, front, or center of where they really are. It's like a hologram of them. And you will shoot at it and unload at it and realize nothing happened, and all of a sudden you explode because the person's really off to the side of you.
Yeah.
And shooting at you because they have a better internet connection than you do. So this kind of feeds into like the changes that made this a little more accessible. So I had to go in and retune all the vehicle handling, the specials, and all the weapons. So we did things like we had to make the weapons have area effect on them, or seeking, or both, in order so they could hit cars that were 30 feet either way, in any direction, that they were actually really were within the world itself. And it made it much easier. It took away the skill element that Black had, but it made it a little more accessible by doing that. And things like weapon, or some of the specials that were so hard to land, like Grim, or especially Warthog. Like, we made Grim's weapon seek, so it could hit people. But like Warthog, I remember there's something in the code, it was too hard to make it seek or turret so that it could hit players in online. So we actually added fireballs to it. That would have a longer range and would actually seek when he uses a special, which you won't see those in the original Black.
Right.
And then also things like Darkseid was a particularly problem character, because he has to ram you. And so we added a large area effect to the front of him to make sure that, if he got within 30 feet of you, as he's like flying forward, he's going to cause damage to you, and going to knock you around at that point.
Sweet.
So all these little
special actually landed too.
Yeah. What's that?
Brimstone special was actually usable.
Yeah, Brimstone special is now Superman. Like, that thing will fly through the air and just no matter what, and land on you. It's so good.
Repent.
Repent. So went in, tuned all of that stuff, made it easier to hit simply because of the dial-up limitations. And now when you play it today, you can reliably land this stuff. That I don't want to say that Twisted Metal Black skill shots were too hard, but they were definitely for car combat veterans more than they were for the casual people, and this made it slightly more accessible for them.
That's awesome. And then not only that, but you got, like, you already kind of talked about a little bit with the new game modes for online only. And then you can kind of edit those rooms to be what you want it to be. So you can base it off damage or kills or what have you, which is really cool to add more gameplay to it. And I think the biggest change too was your whole relic system that you brought up a little bit. But what exactly, for anybody who's never played it, what exactly are the relics? Like, what do they do? What was the point of adding them?
Yeah, relics, I think initially it was Kirk's idea, and then I started building them out. So relics were an item you could pick up in the environment that would give you unique powers to your car. So you could pick up a leech relic, and then if you shot somebody, you would basically leech their health, their power, and their turbo out of them and into you as you were damaging them. Or a demolition relic, which would add a huge area effect to any weapon that detonated. So you didn't have to be super accurate with power missiles or Grim's special. You could hit a wall about 60 feet away from somebody, and it would still hit everybody in a 60-foot radius and then light them on fire.
Hell yeah.
So all these, and we had relics that would double your health and regenerate it, or cause double damage. We tried to build the relics in a way that if one was too powerful, there was one or two other relics out there that could counter that, and if closing the little kind of gameplay loop of combat there, so that no one could truly dominate. But it was really fun for players to like run around, pick up relics. You could also ditch them at any time if you didn't want a particular one and you had to pick up a new one. But it changed the overall feel of the game. It wasn't just regular Twisted Metal Black, anymore. In that, Grim could now be tanky if you wanted to. or manslaughter could do double damage if he wanted to.
Yeah.
And you could see these relics above players, and it would make them targets, especially if somebody had a very powerful relic, or if you wanted to make sure they couldn't use that relic against you. A lot of people would target them and kill them. So there was an interesting, stop them from doing that type of mechanic in the game, which spawned the most infamous relic, which was the Buster, and that was definitely one of my creations, where if you have that relic, you have no powers, but if you shoot somebody with a relic, it knocks theirs out and prevents them from picking one up for 60 seconds. And you could go around and terrorize the most powerful relic holder in the game by having this particular relic.
That's so cool. And it adds so much more like depth to the gameplay too. Just like makes it kind of feel like, I don't know, everybody's just like supercharged in a way. And I like that there's both defensive relics and offensive. So it doesn't necessarily just mean, oh, everyone's more powerful and can kill each other faster. It's like there's a lot of strategy involved. Like I remember from firsthand experience using them, like there's one that gives you extra health, and if I remember right, it also lets you recharge health over time. Like if you stop moving, like you'll gain health, which is kind of a cool concept. There's one that just gives you extra shields, so like you take less damage. There's ones that does like double damage. There's one that gives you infinite super machine guns or whatever. Yeah, so there's a ton of different relics for a ton of different gameplay styles that can really add a whole new element to Twisted Metal Black that you would literally cannot experience with the main game itself.
Yeah, we thought they were fun, and they were fairly well received, with at least internally, from what we found both at Incog and Sony. I kind of wish they brought them back,
Yeah,
but I
me
understand it makes balancing a real nightmare.
Yeah.
As far as like, okay, Grimm's got this, but then he could have this, and he could have this, and it keeps changing his overall scope of his character, and that becomes really tough in multiplayer.
Yeah.
I can't say that Twisted Metal Black Online was 100% well balanced, but again, we were like a small 14-person team on that, making that game. So being able to test out every parameter would have been really difficult to do.
Right. And you guys were able to add a wrench guy, so
we added wrench guy. We also this was an interesting thing. Like, we started to add new levels for the game. I realized that with only, at the min spec, only having 4 players in a level like Suburbs, people could run forever.
Yeah.
They just kept circling the map, avoiding everybody, getting health, and matches lasted forever. That was one of the reasons we put in a time limit as one of the parameters, or damage limit into the game to kind of end those things early. But it made us realize very quickly that we had to make smaller levels. So we made like, what was it, power plant and elevators, but they were taking too long for when Sony wanted to launch the modem. So at that point, I came up with the idea of like, okay, we can't make any new levels. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go in and section off the levels to be much, much smaller, the existing levels.
Yeah.
So we have like mini suburbs, mini downtown, mini skyscrapers that came out of that just by, cutting down the levels and making them much more action-packed for 4-player experience.
Yeah. And also just like if you wanted to 1v1 your friend, if you were like arguing over something, it made it a lot better.
Cage match.
Yeah. Like the original Twisted Metal 1, first level in the tournament feel.
About wrench guy. Just to go back to wrench guy.
Wrench guy.
It's John Doe, right? Someone mentioned that it's John Doe, and I
think
I kind of see it because it's like this shredded bald dude with green shorts.
It doesn't surprise me. Like we reused art from everything in this game.
Where'd the wrench come from? There's no wrench in the game. Not one that big. That's a big wrench.
It's a giant ass wrench.
I'm pretty sure it was either Dan or Matt. Dan or Matt worked on the they worked on the Black cinematics, and they're very good at modeling and art and all that stuff, and they actually got integrated into the Small Brawl team and then onto Black Online. And I'm pretty sure they just grabbed existing art that either didn't make it, or they're just like, okay, you can take John Doe, put a get mask on him, and we'll stick this wrench in his hand, and then this will look good in this splash screen that basically has a car bay in it. So it'll make sense. And thus Wrench Guy was born.
Wrench Guy.
Hope Wrench Guy comes back for season 2 of the show.
Just a little cameo. That'd be cool.
But yeah, that was mainly it for Twisted Metal Black Online. We rolled off of the little team, rolled off from Small Brawl. We brought on a couple more people, and we're given the task of making an online version, and we decided to push the envelope and give
Not
a new
only was it
experience.
online, superior.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised a lot of people actually like Twisted Metal Black Online much more than regular Black. But looking at it now, like it was a friendlier, more casual, accessible version of Twisted Metal Black.
Yeah, for sure. And I think not only that, but just as somebody, like I stated earlier, like I personally don't have much issues with the single player version of Black in terms of difficulty, but I prefer the feeling of most of the vehicles and like their new balances in the online version. Like Brimstone feels really good to play as. I like that Mr. Grimm special homes in a little bit, which just feels really cool. Crazy 8 I think even feels a little better on the online. I don't know. I like all the balances and tweaks you guys did. Whether that made it easier to play, more than likely, but just in general, I think if those were the cars like how they were in the main game, I think it would have made the game even better.
Yeah, and I mean, Black did an amazing job. Those guys did a fantastic job on Twisted Metal Black, and it is easier to go in after the fact.
Yeah.
And tune a couple of things. I'm not even gonna imply that we went in and like built this from scratch and made it better than Black. And it's like, no, we took a really good product and looked at it through fresh eyes, and then tuned up what we knew wasn't going to work online, and it actually ended up working out pretty good.
Right. Exactly. Well, all right. I think we can probably go through now our individual ratings of just the Black Online by itself. Kong, you want to give your thoughts on the online versus the single player?
I'd give it a 10.
Hell yeah.
The multiplayer it feels like that's how Black was just like meant to be played. Because the single player you can tell that it's like it was very gameplay centric. Like that was the main focus of everything they did. Like,
yeah,
you wouldn't add stuff like the secret specials and whatnot if that wasn't the case. Like, it feels like just the way to play Twisted Metal Black. It feels so much better to have all these little intricacies throughout the characters and stuff, and be able to do it against other players. It just feels so much better than doing it against bots. Like, I see Twisted Metal Black as the equivalent of like playing like a COD game or something and just running around in a private match shooting bots. Like, it's just like, I could just be doing this against real people. I don't see the point of doing this.
Yeah.
Like that's how I see. If Twisted Metal Black Online didn't exist, I would give Black like single player a higher rating. But I think the fact that Black Online exists just kind of makes the regular Black just irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally, understand that and agree to that. So 10 out of 10. All right. So Drew, you already gave the main game a 10 out of 10.
No, do me last.
Do you? Okay.
Do me last.
All right. Do you last? Got it. All right. Well, I know you're kind of biased, but Dave, what do you think of Twisted Metal Black Online?
Good God. I'm gonna go with a 9.
Ooh.
I am gonna go with a 9 on it. The little team was pretty new to game dev, and we, outside of Sony telling us to do so, we decided to push the envelope and add in the relics, the game modes, the features, and all this stuff, and still launch it on time for what the base thing was that they asked us for. And it turned out really good, and it seems to have a pretty big following, and big in quotes by a couple hundred people, but still, I was pleased. I was pleased with the end product. So yeah, I'm gonna go with a 9. Oh,
Hell yeah.
yeah, that was the other thing. The only reason I'm gonna ding it down a little bit is we were going to have team modes in it where it was red team versus blue team, and that code is actually still in there that people found that we had to cut.
Ooh.
We were also going to have players versus AI boss too, where everybody was just a free for all trying to kill a very big tough boss in it, and whoever did the most damage won.
Oh, that would have been
By
cool.
the time it was killed, and that was another one that kind of fell by the wayside. But we wanted to keep adding new cool stuff for players in there. We just ran out of time.
Yeah. Well,
So with those two cut features, it's a 9.
Definitely a fair rating. And winners, what do you give it?
I would say a 9. Although I'm kind of speaking from limited experience because I haven't played it as much as some other people. But from the time I did play it, it's super fun with what you can set for like the different game modes. Like my favorite one was it the hunted, where you have to kill the person who has like the yellow name, or was like the hunter or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That like that was some awesome fun. Just kind of, I wasn't even chasing the hunt. I was just killing everybody just to fuck with people. It's just like, what the fuck, winners. That and kind of like the other fond memory I have too is when we all did the skyscrapers as dark side special only, and just spamming the living shit out of it, and seeing this last man standing. Like the potential was definitely there. Like I wish there was more that could have been done with it. Like if it's a lot better than Twisted Metal PS3 Online for sure in terms of like customization for the game types and the game modes. And I think the relics were an awesome idea for sure. But I will say that when all said and done, I think the only gripe that I could probably have with it is the accessibility of it today. Some people aren't too privy of it's not just a pick up and play kind of thing. There's some steps involved, and especially with like X-Link Kai and all that, and especially again like what Goodrich was saying, like when you're facing against your opponents, they could be 50 feet this way or halfway across the map. Like again, it was made for the time that it was supposed to be for.
Yeah. They didn't have gigabit internet back then.
Right. But I think if I don't know, like there was a lot of potential there that I wish kind of got fleshed out more. So I would definitely say a 9 out of 10. I just wish, with what's out there today, I wish, it was a little bit more stable, more accessible.
Yeah, totally fair. Great rating. For me, yeah, I would I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. The main thing, like I would have given it a 9 as well, because I definitely do think it's a leg up from the main base game, from the limited amount of time I've had with it as well.
100%.
But the reason I'm going to give it a 10 is because I have to give it credit where credit is due, in the sense that looking back, like it was 2001, it was very the infancy of online console gaming. And the fact that we can still even play it today, to me, is like a miracle. I think that's really fucking cool. And there's also a pretty dedicated group of fans out there that still play it like every weekend to this day. And if any game can grab anyone's attention like that, to where you can create a community that can come back every week and still play it and have a good time with it, that has to say something about the game itself. And not only that, but of course you had the upgrades with the relics, the different game modes that weren't in the original game. There's even some new levels. Granted, most of them are just like miniature versions of the main levels, but again, it kind of adds more to that. Like if you want to do a 1v1 or 2v2 or whatever, you can have a really good time with that and not have to deal with these gigantic maps from the main game. And you don't have the downside of, if you don't like the stories, you don't have to worry about them. You just have the amazing frantic gameplay of Twisted Metal Black. And I don't know if you mentioned this, but you can go against bots I think if it's just single player, correct?
Correct. Yes, the bots will fill out any missing players, and then as players join, the bots will drop out.
That's so cool. And that to me is like, I don't think that was really a thing in most online games at the time. So the fact that you did have AI in the online really shows, there was a lot of love and care put into it. And even if you never got the main single player version of Twisted Metal Black, you can still play Twisted Metal Black online, even if you got no friends. So kind of cool. So yeah, I would give it a 10 out of 10 easily. And I know Drew was waiting for this, so best for last. Let's hear it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I just needed some time to reflect and think about this. So after much consideration, I gave the base game a 10 out of 10. I do think that this game improved on the core gameplay in ways that can't be understated. So I've decided to give it a Goodrich out of 10.
My
Which
God!
when converted to minion code is 71515418938 out of 10. So
Oh,
What?
okay.
Yep.
Speaking in tongues, man. The power of Christ compels you.
I turned I turned the rating into a
The Lord
minion code.
works in mysterious ways.
Okay. All
So when you
right.
convert Goodrich to alphanumeric, it's that string of numbers out of 10.
You're too smart for me, man.
It's probably it's like 715 billion out of 10, I think, something like that.
This is the
Sounds
highest
good
rating
to
you've
me,
ever given
baby.
anything. All right. Well, definitely a fair rating. I can't disagree with you there. Given that I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10 as it is. Yeah, I think we can all unanimously agree that the online is amazing. And if you guys ever want to give it a try, you can join our Discord in the link below if you're not a part of it already. And we do have some easy to follow step-by-step guides in the Discord that show you how to play Twisted Metal Black online to this day. And we will be hosting community game nights from time to time, so hope to see you there. It's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, I think that is everything we want to talk about in this massive episode. We've been recording for over 2 hours and 40 minutes. So if anybody out there is still listening, for one, just thank you for sticking with us for this whole amazing episode. And we hope to see you next week as well when we cover Twisted Metal Small Brawl, another project by Mr. Goodrich here. So that should be another amazing episode that we're excited to cover. But with that, thank you so much for listening, and we'll hopefully see you next week. Later, everybody.